Hello everyone and welcome to Fleet's Random Ramblings 48. Good lord, we really are closing in on 50 now. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, we really are closing up on that time. It's really weird. Sorry for the slightly later start today. It took a while to get home from work. I needed to have a rest. Shoulder's killing me. And I had to then make dinner. And so it's taken me slightly longer. But I'm here now. There we go, and we are live. Marvellous, excellent, fantastic. And
I'm going to bring the document up then.
there we go. And if I just... Fantastic. There we go. Boom.
Has anyone here heard of the hit game Baldur's Warcry?
No, Foxo.
Dear.
You know, Fleet, you probably forgot you even gave me this permission.
No, I didn't. You just never use it.
That's because he's never
I'm
around.
always at work during ramblings.
Well, here we are. Ramblings is now live. Really need to get Sol to finish off the background image. AMC Woods, what if the Time Lords from Doctor Who were in the Star Wars Galaxy and the Legends timelines? Nope.
Goodbye, Star Wars.
Nope. I'm filing that one under nope o'clock.
I would say that, well, it's not even that halfly. It's literally just, if they choose to fight, that's it, you're done. Because even in Doctor Who, the Time Lords War makes zero sense.
Because it's self-contradictory, deliberately, because of the way a fucking time war works. It's
not self-contradictory in a good way, unfortunately.
No, it's not. But again, that's the way a time war would actually work.
No, there is ways of doing it. But
it's supposed to be this horrible
anyway.
thing that everyone wants out of, but nobody can get out of once it's started.
Hello. Phoenix will be joining us later when he gets back.
I'm just gonna say this now. I don't want the chat dominated by modern questions. I'm all for one or two, but I'd like to be able to have input on my own show.
Yeah, fair. We were handling a lot of modern stuff in Ship's Talk earlier, anyways. So, well,
Okay.
I say modern. Some of these were 60-year-old
you might even have to mute
questions.
some of the interest.
Yeah, some of those were 60-year-old questions, so I don't really know if that counts as modern.
Aircraft
modern.
from 50 years ago in my head versus what aircraft actually were 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, a 50-year-old aircraft is
an F.
15.
Yes, it is. Ouch. Your typical gunnery officer asks, first greetings, first question for the day. Thoughts on the F-86 Saberdog? Do you think they're trying to replicate the F-86 performance into a dedicated interceptor? And do you think it's a stopgap intercept until the F-102 or F-104 enter service, and also to cover the cancelled XF-90?
I can't answer that question.
Cold War aircraft, not my suit. If I had Rex here, I could probably deal with it, but
It's a time period of aircraft that's just out of my...
Same.
Yeah. Same thing here. I wouldn't have a hope in hell.
What? Why does the West German Navy have 2 pre-dreadnoughts? Why do they have a battlecruiser? I have several questions, none of them good. First of all, why is West Germany... Okay, assuming you have West Germany, which means that the Second World War ended as historically, why does that navy have anything larger than a patrol boat with an autocannon? Because I'm sure Cyclic and the panel will be aware, in the aftermath of the Second World War, neither Germany is getting anything navally from any of the Allies or Soviets, as in any leeway, for at least 10, possibly 20 years, to build anything
They weren't
larger.
even countries. Like, they were occupied zones for 10 years. Like, they weren't countries. Germany was unmade for about 10 to 15 years.
It took the aftermath of the Berlin airlift to turn the idea of a West German state from a pipe dream to something the Allies could countenance, and to turn the Allies...
And a lot of political pressure from the US on its European allies. Lot.
Mostly the French. The British did take some convincing, but it was the French who had to be really heavily pushed.
And I can't really blame them.
No, neither could I.
You know, they'd just been through 3 wars with this state.
Yeah, not fun. Timu Loka asks, what if the French did not build Bern, what would they have built instead? They wouldn't, probably. The reason that the French built Bern is because they had literally no other option. They only had one large capital hull to be converted into a carrier. They basically picked the most advanced hull on the stocks that could be converted.
They were under no illusions it was going to be a terrible carrier.
Unfortunately, they didn't realize quite how bad she was actually going to be. The problem is that she taught them
the point of Bern was to be sort of a French, post-show Ranger analog.
The problem is she's not even that.
The
problem is she's not even that. Because of the way
it might have been their attempt, but that didn't end up...
Yeah,
she was France's first attempt at doing a capital ship conversion into a carrier when they didn't know what a carrier was supposed to be.
Look,
it turned out pretty bad. They learned wrong things from it, as have been previously covered.
Yeah, I used to sing Bern's praises. I used to even think she was better than Eagle.
That was wonderful seeing Clark slap you down on that one.
Yes, I don't want to talk about it. Oh boy, here we go.
I'm just not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole because I think Clark already has beaten you over this head.
Oh, he has. It was glorious.
With a stick the size of HMS Eagle at that.
Yeah, by the way, Cyclic, I'm now a flat pancake. Hi, I'm talking to you from the floor.
What?
I know.
Yeah.
I can tell.
So, question from YouTube. Fleet Oceans, if the Pensacola class were built to sensible limits on cruisers, i.e. 15,500 tons and 10-inch guns, what does the USN go for? So just to paraphrase that question and make it make sense, he's basically saying, what takes the place of the Pensacola class if the treaties are 15,500 tons and 10-inch guns on cruisers?
Nothing, because the Pensacola class are the light cruisers.
Yeah.
Just straight up, that's what they were built to be. They were light cruisers.
You might have the US building something to take
that quote heavy cruiser role, but it's not going to be the Pensacola's.
The Pensacola's will still be built because it's not enough to just have the biggest cruisers. You also need a lot of cruisers, and you can't have a lot of the biggest cruisers. Even the US can't.
The Leander and Arethusa classes.
Basically, yeah. What was I going to say? Hang on. Come on, Fleet. Use brain.
You may not see a 10-inch gun cruiser from the U.S. It depends on what Japan does, but... Because that is kind of an awkward caliber.
Yeah, it's the worst large caliber. You don't get any of the performance of an 11 or 12-inch. You don't get any of the rate of fire of a 9 or 8-inch. And you get the worst of both, the best of neither.
You might see, because in that tonnage range, you can actually get... I mean, look at the Baltimores.
Yeah.
I mean, the Baltimores are not really that, but... Well, no, they're a little bit lighter than that, unless you start talking full load. But you could look at something kind of like the Baltimores in that tonnage range.
So basically, you've got light scout cruisers and light cruisers, scout cruisers with 8-inch guns, and then you've got cruisers that are designed to go and slap other cruisers in the face that basically have the same 8-inch guns, but are just immune to possibly the heavier guns of their opponents. and are just trying to
that are
overwhelm
just
them
much
with...
better protected. Although at the same time,
The problem is the US actually
maybe
has...
you see 4 twin
So-
9 something, but
Yeah, Gunner
I don't
is
know.
asking, would you possibly see 9.2-inch guns for the US, and also
No.
why not enlarged Omaha but using 8-inch guns?
The problem is...
and a lot of Omaha does not work.
No.
Yeah,
The problem
the
that
casement guns
Yeah.
are not efficient.
The problem that you've got with the US is you've got two choices for a large cruiser. Given the guns they have available, the experience they have working with them, and the doctrinal knowledge they have on those guns. You either go with a 10-inch gun, as seen on the very last US armoured cruisers, not the same 10-inch gun, but a 10-inch gun, developed from that weapon, or you go with an 8-inch gun. Those are your options. The US
And-
won't adopt a 9 because there's no precedent or point.
Well, it's beyond that. What does a 9 get you that an 8 doesn't, right? Except
Exactly.
a lower rate of fire. And the US was very cognizant of rate of fire at multiple caliber ranges.
Yeah. What you might see is the US building a class of 2 10-inch cruisers just to basically untie their hands. And what I mean by that is they build a pair of... No, hear me out. They build a pair of these cruisers, go, oh, well, we tried building the big cruisers. Right, Congress, shut up. We've built your 10-inch
The
cruisers.
US Navy
They
didn't
suck."
need to do that.
yeah. They might do a design study.
They'll do
Yeah, but I
don't
design
think they'd
studies
actually
and go,
build
this is why it's bad.
Yeah.
The US Navy, precisely because Congress can be so disinterested, is able to sit down and do the analytics and go, this is bad idea, here is why, shut the fuck up, excuse my French.
It's alright, it's ramblings.
That's it. No. That's a quote of what they're saying to Congress.
Basically.
They've done this multiple times.
Bloody hell.
So have the Marines of late, by the way. There was actually a point where some Congress critters were suggesting the Marine Corps become a counterinsurgency focused force while the Army takes on the high end. Hang on. While the Army does the amphibious landing stuff, and I don't remember which Marine Corps officer it was, but he flat out in a hearing went, then name the bill after yourself so the historians know who to blame when we lose the next Pacific War.
Wow. That is a... that's a paddle.
That is literally calling them out. And just
You'll
saying,
notice
"Why not?"
there was no more suggestion of that by Congress. The U.S. service branches are not opposed to giving direct feedback.
Pretty fast. Sometimes it's needed.
Yes. I have a sneaking suspicion what you're going to see is either a 4 twin turret arrangement with a 10-inch armored against 8-inch fire. Maybe. Because that's going to be a stretch on 15,000 tons, by the way. Because the Baltimores have a reasonable protection suite, and they're 17,000 tons full load. Right? Or you're going to see basically a Baltimore Light. In that environment, it is entirely possible that the U.S. decides to stick with the 8-inch 55 and the 6-inch that we would go with. It's entirely possible, and you just see, an evolution out of the 5-gun design with the Brooklyn. That sort of realm. But, instead of sacrificing a turret to get more anti-aircraft capability and a better secondary arrangement, right? They just
do it.
Stick with it.
Yeah, just do it. It's like
retaining the 15-gun setup.
Ooh, that's gonna be that's death to anything.
Well, anything at close range. I mean, that's the thing with 6-inch cruisers is they got to get in close. and even then, that's any cruiser.
Yeah, battleships
Now,
may not be so forgiving.
conversely, what does that enable the Japanese to do? Because the Japanese, immediately, whether or not they go with 10-inch guns, they may. They also may not, because they can armor their cruisers better to be far more resilient.
And the Japanese,
They're the ones I'd expect to potentially initially try to go 10-inch.
it's obvious what
And
the
then
British
run
are
into
gonna
problems and not. To be honest, I'm not sure the British are going to go. This is one of the reasons why this wasn't done. Is because the British didn't need a lot of heavy cruisers; they needed a lot of light cruisers.
Yeah. The British will probably. We know the British had a design for a cruiser with 8 9.2s. And
Yeah.
so what you're probably going to see is a follow-on to the Hawkins, but it will be a far smaller class than the actual counties were. And then you're just going to see them crank absolute masses of 6-inch cruisers out.
I mean, it depends on what
Do you
total
think we
tonnage
get
then comes in the
Leanders-
next treaty.
Leanders
But
then? Or would they just go straight to the town?
No, it'll be Leanders, because you're talking about an RN that's looking to have lots of cruisers, and if it wants lots of cruisers within its displacement limit, especially if you've got the, 6 to 8 9.2-inch cruisers sitting there as flag vessels
they're
and
still
station
going to need the
vessels.
towns.
Oh no, yeah,
They're still going to need something like the towns.
oh yeah, but that'll come after Second London, but for the first tranche in the 20s, talking about Arethusa, Leander.
Gunnery officer, the U.S. didn't like the idea of using its cruisers for torpedo attacks. That was the role of the destroyers. They were far more expendable. U.S. doctrine held to close down the range before you executed torpedo attacks. This is one of the reasons why, when you see the Japanese try their very long-range torpedo attacks, most of the time they don't work out. Or they end up torpedoing their own allied ships. Mogami. But torpedoes are best used at relatively close range. And at close range, the long lance still does have an advantage. It can be nastily fast. You can set that thing to run quick. But I'm not entirely convinced that you would see torpedo tubes left on or as part of them, just simply because they're going to take up space that anti-aircraft, just the physical space. It's not just weight, the physical space that you can put anti-aircraft. And the cruisers were some of the primary escorts for the aircraft carriers, which means they need anti-aircraft firepower.
Right, I think we've wound that one up quite nicely. Your typical gunnery off. Second question: why didn't the US designate the Buckley and Evarts class destroyer escort class as frigates, since they had 3-inch main guns? And obviously the John C. Butler class DE onwards had 5-inch guns, so they would be more fitting to be designated DE, because the US does not operate frigates. That is a Royal Navy designation. The US does not.
I'm going to refer you to Phoenix's write-up and Ship's Talk on that one, just so that we can move past this one quickly.
Hello all.
It's the
It's from
Dutchman!
earlier today.
Happy VJ Day, everyone.
Is it? Oh, I see.
2nd September.
Oh, right. Marvellous.
Oh god, the kids are going back to school soon, aren't they?
Been there, done that, got the postcard. Anyway.
Why do you think I'm here? I have off work today.
Rune's Lair asks on YouTube, if you could meet one famous dictator, pop some beer and ask something, who would it be and what would you ask? Okay, that is... Okay, I need someone who's not going to immediately kill me on sight for popping up out of existence in the middle of nowhere.
Oda Nobunaga, personally.
He's a... it's not... No, he's a...
He
He's a
He
feudal-
was a
Daimyo
warlord,
is
and
effectively a dictator.
Yes, it is, but...
It's semantics to say otherwise.
Who would I want to meet? God, that is a tough one. That is bloody hell. That is.
Would Napoleon count?
You know what? Yes, I'd like to visit Napoleon on St. Helena in the years before his death, and ask him if there
Okay,
was
Arnold Rimmer.
and what? And ask him if there was one mistake he think doomed him. Genuinely, that I would like to pick the minds of the first French emperor. I mean, who wouldn't? What an
Myself, personally.
Yeah, myself. There's so much more interesting people you could talk to.
Who are dictators?
I think interesting does come down to person to person.
Does this come with the caveat of whatever I ask them, I won't be like, I won't face consequences?
I think so. Yes.
Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. With the question being, what the hell were you thinking? Like, my guy, you have effectively been at war with them for 10 years. Or for 8 years. What made you think you'd pull that twice? Everybody and their brother on this planet knew they were gonna fight.
Oh my.
They fought back the first time, which is why you're in this mess to begin with.
Okay. Ames,
Next.
give me a
I'm
second.
glad I made somebody spit their drink out.
Give me a minute. Give me a minute. I need a minute.
Team, I don't think that's the underlying reason here.
AMC Woods asks a question, which is actually a fairly simple question to answer. What if the entire 8th Air Force at its height during World War II was sent back in time with the personnel, fuel, and ordnance for 10 months of non-stop combat operations to the Western Front of World War I in 1915? How does the war go with such a powerful formation the Triple Entente now has at their disposal? The war's over in 1916!
No, not necessarily. Because you're going to have the commander who thinks they can win through
Is
strategic
Cyclic breaking up
bombing.
for anyone else, or is it just on
Yes,
my
he
end?
is.
Just want to clarify.
He
Right,
is.
okay.
He's taking. Might have to. Is the
Might just check your internet router.
Yeah, is Theatre at Sea's bandwidth creaking under the strain? I wonder.
Well, no, it seems to be everyone else is fine. It's just Cyclic that was the thing. So hence why I was asking if it was on my
Oh,
end or
yeah.
not.
He'll be back.
Oh. I don't think that I can tend to agree. Cyclic. You probably don't see the war ending in 1916, but things could be interesting.
I mean, you're talking about the 8th Air Force. All of it. All of it.
Which is a lot.
That's a lot of boom.
I'm pretty sure we've asked something very similar.
Not
Wellesley.
It's the this is the first time Woods has escalated to this level of firepower going back. He's usually talked about squadron strength with specific aircraft. Now he's talking about really bringing the hammer down on the Western Front. You were saying Cyclic? Not necessarily. Cyclic, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Give me a sec.
Not necessarily. You can't launch a decapitating strike. Strategic bombing doesn't work that way. Even in the First World War.
Best game ever.
What is the best game ever?
Baldur's Gate 3 can kill
Yeah, she's
children.
Oh, for God's sake, Foxo.
Hey, she's got a new toy, Flea. Just leave her be for a moment.
Hit a child in the face and they died.
Please, Foxo, now is not the time. No, Cyclic has not dipped. He's just trying to. He's just
Yeah.
sorting computer issues, I believe. Happens to the best of us, folks. But yes, you're talking about a very, 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 very large amount of boom. Like we're not Like, I know I often get shouted at for saying this Air Force can blast, like, this squadron of aircraft will blast a hole in the Western Front. Now I can say it with some degree of confidence. And I'm not just talking about the strategic bombers. Tactical aviation will just enable the Entente to blast a hole clean through the front line.
One thing that would be a bit odd is, so A, where are they turning up? Are they turning up mid-air and just going to land? Because
No. It says,
one problem I'm seeing
it
is,
says
where are they going to
personnel-
operate from?
It says personnel, fuel, and ordnance for 10 months of non-stop combat ops. That means the bases are going back as well.
Does it? That's not included.
Dragon, it basically is.
It-
How else are the personnel,
not,
fuel,
though.
and... Dragon, how else are the personnel, fuel, or ordnance for 10 months of combat operations going to be applied to the
Because then,
bombers?
if you're doing that, if the base is also going back, then all of a sudden they get radars and all sorts as
But
well.
I wouldn't be especially concerned about that particularly because even if it delays their deployment by a month, there's nothing preventing the building of airfields where they need to be.
Yeah,
It's going to be interesting though to basically for them
There's
to have to develop
there's
these
any
airfields that are large enough to work with them.
but
You're going to need some pretty big airfields in comparison to what's currently in use.
like I say though, I find it very unlikely that the the airfields would not go back with them in this particular case, given what
And the question is, where are
am
you
I
putting
coming
it?
through clearly?
you are
Yep.
now.
Makes
Hurrah!
perfect sense.
Okay, I had to restart Discord. So my first thing here is the airfield they'll be able to make them. That's not a problem. Even if they have to be gravel strips, like that's fine. What I would say the biggest problem is actually 8th Air Force's command in and of itself. There's going to be a strong desire to try strategic bombing. They are utterly incapable of winning a war this way. It's just not possible with the technology they possess. It's just not.
I mean, 8th Air Force also has tactical aviation at its disposal, doesn't it? Along with medium bombers.
Sure, but now we're talking about the ranges they're operating from. They can range all of that, almost all of that stuff, very deep. If they're smart and they realize the tactical impact they can have, the operational impact they can have, it can be a war-changing impact, like restore movement in under a year.
Yeah.
If they're not, it could be hilariously embarrassing for them.
Yeah. I mean, there's no question of the German Imperial Air Force stopping any of the raids. Ha ha ha! No.
Yeah.
I mean, flak might be a potential problem, especially if the 8th Air Force
Far
gets
less
some-
than you, basically negligible.
So AMC Woods has added that the airfield, the fully operational bases will also come back, with Jimmy Doolittle as the commander.
You've put that arrogant ass in charge of them?
Yeah, I think you just doomed this.
Great. The 8th Air Force is
Oh,
just
who
going
went
to try
right?
and
So the initial
flatten-
question said 44 to 45.
Yeah,
Who
the
was
8th Air
actually the
Force
commander
at
of that
its height.
period?
44's Doolittle's reign because he's the one that gets shit sorted out.
Oh.
Remember correctly.
Yeah.
Oh,
But he's
so-
also the guy that doubles down on daylight bombing, that completely locks it in.
Ay, fucking hell. So we're talking about an escalating strategic bombing offensive, but also some tactical aviation being freed up to support the Entente at the front.
It depends, because here's the thing you got to consider. 8th Air Force weren't the primary guys going after the tactical objectives. A lot of those units were assigned directly to field armies. Or the above command, the Army Group Command.
I mean, I suppose we could take, given we don't need to escort bombers anymore, we can take P-51s off of bomber escort and use them
If
to...
they decide to do that with them.
I mean, what else are they going to do with them?
Well, given the P-51's range and how little the anti-air threat is, you can use them to hit targets more precisely in Germany.
Strap a couple of bombs to them, and they'll be pretty good.
Oh no, it would be the alternative. A couple of drop tanks and a single bomb.
And they're 50 cal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or
The
rockets.
50 cal will go
drop
through a fair
tank.
bit. Mm.
Like, I mean, it entirely comes down how do they get used, and the other problem is there's gonna be a huge argument over who's the higher authority to 8th Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go. What's the name?
And, you know,
Wellesley's adding that the US is
it's
neutral at this point in time.
1915. Yeah, the U.S. is neutral. They're going to be sitting there twiddling their thumbs, going, "What the?"
I mean, I would point out the question did specify it's at the Entente's disposal.
So that means there's going to be some very confused American officers, I feel.
I guess they're one heck of a volunteer corps.
Yeah.
I mean, given the war they've come from to the war they've come to, they might see it as a chance to prevent that other war from happening. Maybe that's the motivation.
Well, they're also not really going to be in the position to actually prevent that.
Unless the intensified
Well,
bombing raids
if
gets
they're
very
trying
lucky
to
and takes out certain
force-
people.
Or they find out exactly what trench bunker Hitler's
Yeah.
in, and they come in with fucking
Yeah,
napalm.
everything just flattening.
But here's the other thing, right? Like, it's still entirely possible there is another war where Germany is the revisionist threat
Mm-hmm.
and centerpiece.
Yeah.
It's just
But yeah,
not Hitler.
Like I was about to say, does
Like-
that stop anything?
Because, like,
I feel like
Weimar was already violating the treaty for a while.
Weimar was literally the worst possible outcome. It was broken enough to be bitter and angry, but not too broken to not be a threat.
The only part of Versailles that truly worked was the naval side.
Yep.
Wayne gotta love France.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh no! France wasn't the problem. It was
Uh.
Roosevelt. It was Wilson sitting on his hill, basically
I'm
dragging
not
the French
sure
back.
that's the case either, Fleet.
Look, it's very convenient to blame Wilson for obvious and valid reasons, because he's one of the worst human beings to live.
Like, Weimar was simultaneously not strong enough, but not light enough either. It was this weird balance, and to be honest, even if you looked at the pure French and British demands, right, they weren't hard enough or harsh enough either. Nobody wanted to stick around and occupy Germany for 10, 20 years. Because nobody could. Except the US, and the US had absolutely no desire to do it for understandable reasons.
Mm-hmm. Knight. Wilson's ideal wasn't to end empires. Wilson didn't have an ideal goal. He wasn't an idealist. Wilson's plan was to put the US above everyone else's and dictate downwards. It wasn't about destroying empires for the sake of destroying empires. It was about destroying empires to elevate the US to a position of unparalleled primacy. That was the point.
Knock, knock. It's us. Y'all just had to fight a second world war for that. He could have saved y'all a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. I'm being sarcastic here.
Mm.
Okay, so next question. From Knight, how silly is the idea of a Republic of China ordering a Lion class but armed with the G3's preliminary 16.5 45 caliber guns? It's the idea.
Well, we're getting
Incredibly
16.5
silly.
wrong.
I'm just going to be blunt.
Yeah.
At least he admits it.
It would be a massive treaty violation.
Yep. Concentrated Cat says, "Greetings. Second question of the day. I understand Germany, Italy, and Japan took on enormous amounts of debt to fund their war effort. How are these debts paid off? They weren't. The countries ceased to exist as they originally started."
Well, they were.
To be perfectly blunt.
Because, to be fair, it was up until a while ago. I can't exactly how many years ago now. But Germany was still paying off their debt.
No, they're paying off the reparations, not the debt.
Right. But the debt, I'm pretty sure, was also re-included in the reparations. But yeah.
May
Right.
have been. I'm not entirely sure. That's off the top of my head.
I find it a little bit odd if they would just immediately let that go, but
Um,
I'm going to interject with one modern thing, and just because I'm putting it in chat and it's funny. Very confused Australia. Oh, wait, that didn't take the link. Stand by. I'm going to link a very confused Australian frigate at the annual Axis meetup off of Japan. There you go.
Well, and also, is the French frigate there to keep an eye on them all?
No, Vichy.
Oh God, cycling. That's hilarious. Okay, all right. Okay, where were we? What was I doing? Oh yeah.
this will be one from
I
YouTube.
certainly enjoy the Japanese destroyer that's leading the entire pack.
Knight. I'm just gonna answer
Not
that.
actually Destroyer.
I know.
Escort.
Knight, I'm just going to answer that question. I'm just going to very quickly skip over the question you just said below about Gascoigne and Alsace and just say very silly. Because, well, that's all I can really say about it. Not really a practical idea.
What's the question?
It's about Gascoigne with Alsace's turrets being silly. Type 2.
What?
How silly is a battleship of Gascogne's hull with the Alsace Type 2 turrets? And I have no idea what any of that means.
That's not actually that odd at all.
And I'm just going to go, that's silly, and move on.
It's not actually.
Dragon, can we not go down a rabbit hole, please?
Well, right.
That's the whole point of the show.
And also, right, if I'm remembering correctly of Alsace number 2, is that the one with the 3x3 16s? Off the top of my head.
I don't
Like,
know.
It's basically moves to a 3 triple layout instead of quads.
The French weren't planning to use 16s. They were sticking with the 15.
They were.
That-
Like, they were
Not-
literally looking at these.
not
not
from what I've-
not for the Richelieus, but
Not from what I've read.
there's plenty of French stuff on a French 16-inch gun fleet. Something they had looked into.
The likelihood of them actually going with it, though, is highly skeptical.
They probably would have stuck with the 15s because it was easier for them, because they already had them in production, but I could still see them trying it.
Besides, it's the French, they're incredibly arrogant.
I mean,
Yeah, so the point... Yeah, so the actual layout of a 3x3, even maybe the 16s, it's potentially doable. It'll just take a lot of rejigging. Yes, I play as your lane Timu, so yes, I have seen Gascoigne there. If anything, it's basically Flandre, in fact, actually.
I have no problem with the word viable, Knight. Okay. Question from Brackman, and I will make this very short and very sweet because I have already decided how I'm going to answer this question.
This one will do.
Good evening, a repeat question from me. How would ship designs have evolved if in 1936 an open source method for generating a force field was developed that could neutralize the relative velocity of incoming projectiles or missiles on impact? Considering this force field could be deployed at a distance ranging from 1 to 500 meters from the hull, how would ships be designed to manage the resulting energy with 70% converted to heat and 30% to electric energy? Additionally, how might these force fields influence defensive strategies and the overall functionality of ships during that era? That question is fundamentally unanswerable.
Well, yes, and
No.
as Phoenix mentioned last week, and you get these energy shields on shells that bypass the shields, and it's a stupid. In my opinion, it's a very silly question because it's not easily answered. But but you can't go in depth into it. You can basically say it all depends on the type how the shields necessarily would.
The only
With
people,
the 70% energy, 70% heat,
the only
you basically
person,
end up having supercooling.
The only
is
person-
needing to become the problem.
the only person that I know who would have the capability to answer that question, the knowledge base required, would be Drac. He's the only person who would have the engineering knowledge to understand how such design changes would affect the ships.
Well, no, what you'd want is a physicist.
No, we don't need a physicist because we have the rough physical characteristics of the shield. The problem is actually dealing with what you do with the heat and the electrical energy.
Which is what you would want a physicist for.
No, you need an engineer.
Fleet, we are nowhere near that being an engineer's problem.
that ain't for an engineer.
Like,
What sort of
Nowhere
qualities
near,
are we
this is-
talking about? Because water is actually a very, very good heat sink and heat conductor. So if they can do something weird like figure out a way to cool through the hull into the ocean, maybe.
But at that point, you've completely
Basically, development
rewritten,
would completely change things.
and at that point, we have to basically go, I don't know.
It's so
Well,
completely
yeah.
far out of it, yeah.
why do you think I just stayed quiet and let you guys talk initially?
Yeah, that's basically just me going, I don't know. Okay, we don't have any questions from YouTube, but I'll wait for Knight's next one, because although Knight does ask a lot of questions, some of them are quite good. In fact, a lot of them are quite good. He just asks a lot of them.
I won't get into the problem of trying to use a radiator into the ocean on that and
Yeah,
corrosion.
yeah.
It
Also, no.
it wouldn't be radiator. It would probably be more like skin cooling.
You're gonna cause all sorts of corrosion problems for your hull too with that.
I mean,
Um,
yes.
It's
You want to just go with another one?
Let's
in the
move
meantime?
on.
Yeah.
While,
Okay,
while
yeah.
Knight's thinking of something else, because there's still a few more left on Discord.
Okay, so Admiral Wellesley, driving fleet insane, as always, says, so take a look at this document. I have looked at this document, and I advise the panel does the same. In this alternate timeline, Britain joined up with Germany during the Great War due to Fashoda. They obviously win. France goes communist, with the Republican government in exile in North Africa. A second world war, the Republic being restored, the nationalists winning the Chinese Civil War, and a massive building program from the USSR and China. What are my thoughts? Well, first of all, I'm very pleased to see that the fleets haven't stupidly ballooned. What I mean...
Where is this? How far up?
I'll put a link in the channel there so everyone can find it. But first of all, I'm very pleased to see the fleets haven't ballooned. I would assume there's a Washington Naval Treaty, given treaty battleships that exist for some of the powers. Although I would question quite what form the treaty battleships end up taking. Although then again, it depends on what some of these things are. So, first of all, you've called HMS Hood a fast battleship. Certain people are going to rage on that one, but I'm not going to get into the specifics of
Moving
that.
over before that one very quickly.
So I'm quite pleased to see that the QEs were seemingly on the way out before the war started, and are therefore in the process of recommissioning. It's good to see the Revengers are probably also gone, or going. That's probably what you'd expect. Renan Repulse still being around in the 50s with all the fast battleships around. I'm a little bit off kilter with that one.
No,
But
it's you probably would actually still see Renown if they chose to keep it, because there were considerations for trying to keep her, and they decided against it in the end.
and this is
But out of all of
after.
them, that's the one that's most likely
I mean,
to.
this is after a Second World War, and apparently it's a Far East crisis.
Honestly, it's why I don't actually see the QEs being there.
Yeah, like I think the QEs and the Revengers
QEs
are
would be
probably
gone.
gone. Yeah, the QEs and the Revengers should probably be gone by this point, or
Repulses.
Repulsion.
Like,
really,
are we talking World War II, or are we talking?
this is
World
1950.
War II?
This is 1950.
Repulse is
Yeah.
gone. Repulse is
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
Like,
Like,
just
if
straight
World
up
War-
replaced
World War
by
II's followed-
Vanguard
yeah.
or another one. Like,
Can I just say, I actually,
She's clapped
go-
out.
I like this. I like this question because it's not about examining a timeline or creating a timeline. It's just asking what our thoughts are on a fleet list, and I can get behind questions like this because I don't have to create the timeline. I get to critique a timeline, which is something we're a far better place to do as a panel. Now, obviously, I don't know the exact specifics of the various ships involved. For example, for some reason, the Monarch class are listed above the Lions, so that possibly leads me to believe that there's some that the Monarchs.
The only question
came
is, what is the
before
Monarch?
did the Monarchs come before the Lions? Are the Monarchs the Lions, and the Lion class is something else? So Ark Royal in service, given what I see on the rest of the fleet list, I don't think she'd still be around. I think Ark Royal would have gone to the Breakers immediately after the Second World War, because you've got all 4 Illustriouses, all 4 Implacables, you've got all 4 Maltas. Ark Royal should be off to the Breakers.
I'd be interested in.
I
I know you say not going into it, but I'd be interested in how this sort of post-war scenario came about, because that will influence which
Britain
ships
joined
are
up with-
retained and which
right,
ones
so-
aren't.
Quickly, the bit of alternative. Britain joins up with Germany during the Great War, dragging Italy and Japan in. France went communist with the Republican government in exile. Second World War happens. The Republic is restored.
I get that. So this is 1950 then. So how did we get from those stated changes to what we're talking about here? Like, what
What's
were
Britain's
the
financial
political
situation?
Flare-ups?
So I'm noticing a lot of light fleets. Honestly, the light fleet should be gone. They should have been flogged. By 1950, the light fleet should be being flogged off to every British ally that wants a carrier. I'm not even kidding. Like the auction hammer should be going up and saying, sold to the Brazilians, sold to the Argentinians, sold to the Austrians, sold to the everybody who wants a light fleet. Colossus, yeah. So the Majestics I can see being maintained. Again,
And actually, not all of them would be sold at this point, fleet.
if they want to maintain the Implacables, the Illustriouses, and the Maltas, yes. So, but it's the choice is: do you keep the Illustriouses and Ark Royal, or do you keep the light fleets? That's your choice.
So the reason I was asking the question is because I think the choice on whether to keep Ark Royal is going to depend on whether or not Britain thinks it's going to have to fight a Pacific War.
Well, apparently
Because
this is
remember,
something
that
called the
was
Far
purpose
East.
for which
Yeah, this is something
the-
called.
Ark Royal was
Right,
originally
apparently, the
constructed.
British
So
fleet.
even if they're just
Apparently, this
using
list
for
includes
around-
Australian stuff or Commonwealth. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So this
almost
includes.
as a
Oh,
template.
okay. So that's not too bad. So there's large cruisers here. I question whether the British would have actually built large cruisers if nothing has changed apart from there being a different Second World War. There's no drive to build such vessels. There's no need, basically. Why would the British build? Like you've not substantially changed enough to bring in the concept of the large cruiser for anyone that isn't the US, because the US has stupid amounts of money and stupid amounts of dockyards and can afford to go, we're just going to build a trio of them because we can.
But in this scenario,
Yes. What do you
is
mean by
that the case?
also? What do you mean by a large cruiser?
I assume he means something with 9.2-inch
Yes.
guns.
Because that's technically not a large cruiser. That's still just a heavy cruiser.
But in the context of
But why would you have a large cruiser when you're the only ones really running around with battle cruisers?
yeah.
It's like Renown and Repulse. I don't know if Hood gets sunk.
Hood's apparently still
Pretty
around.
much
so-
invalidate the idea of a large cruiser for the Royal Navy.
Okay, so destroyers and submarines, I have that's as historical, no problems there. There's nothing you've not changed what doesn't need changing, so I'm fine with that for the Royal Navy. Okay, for the US, not seeing much different. So, okay, something new, Georgia class. I assume that is some form of Sodak or Iowa with. I assume that's some form of battleship between the South Dakotas and the Iowas. Possibly some form of slower Montana with 12-16s, I guess. Possibly. But all 6 Iowas, which gives the US an ability to go and rock up and punch anything in the face it wants to. Also 2 Constellation-class battle cruisers. Don't know what those are. I don't think they're Lexingtons, given the treaties seem to still exist in this world. So they're possibly something else.
Uh,
No idea what those would be.
The thing I would question is, does the U.S. have the motivation in this scenario to build up a fleet this large?
Yes, Two Ocean Navy
I
Act.
mean-
It's still like, I'm sorry. There's a Royal Navy on the other side of the Atlantic. There's a German Empire that exists. The Italian fleet exists. The French
They're
exist.
not
The
Lexingtons,
Japanese.
and I'm going to remove them.
Yeah, the Japanese still exist. I'm sorry. If the treaties have collapsed, the US
There-
is signing the Two Ocean Navy Act. Simple as.
I mean, the Two Ocean Navy Act got signed before it fully collapsed, but yeah, the U.S. is going to be building up a very large fleet. I'm not sure if we're gonna see something between like Sodaks and Iowas. There's not really a reason that they went pretty quickly.
Yeah, I would point out
Um,
I will point out one question. We're all assuming here that the ship classes are in order of being laid down. If they're not, you need to correct that, because otherwise we'll draw false conclusions.
Also, just quickly going to jump back to something. I would personally remove the E through I class from the British, because they were gone at this point. Like, historically, they were gone around 47. Like, even then, like, the Commonwealth navies had also scrapped them. They're just too old at this point.
Thing is, where are the Lexington class carriers? And why are the Yorktowns still here?
What time is it?
1950.
1950, apparently.
The
Why are they-
Lexingtons aren't going to be around. The Yorktowns, if they haven't been involved in a major war, are not going to be beat up.
But look at all those Essexes! Why do you need the Yorktowns?
How many Essexes were built?
Less
Yeah.
than less.
Even if you're not using them in frontline service, you
Uh,
would probably still receive
16, I'm
them
reading, though?
for training.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's more or less the original order. Yeah, no, you're still going to have the
I would
Yorktowns
actually
around for
say-
life of ship.
I would say retain the Yorktowns, but only maybe one, as like a second line training / whatever ship.
They're
So not a frontline unit. But
they're
I think they'd still
perfectly
be useful at this
viable.
point as second line.
now they're
units.
for realistically, it's 1950. We probably haven't seen the jump into naval jets yet for obvious reasons.
From what I can tell, the Second World War was basically Germany, Britain, and Italy beating the French communists to death with a stick.
Okay, so yeah, in that case, we're probably still going to see
The
the
Soviets have gotten
the
involved.
Yorktowns.
So we have the Alaskas, we have the Baltimore
The
class.
Soviets did not.
Yeah, we have the
Okay.
Baltimore class, the Anchorage class, the Oregon City class, and the Des Moines class. So it looks like So I presume the Anchorage and Oregon cities are
Probably
follow-ons.
just evolution.
Yeah, and then
evolves.
and then you've got the Des Moines just being the final stage in that evolution.
The
Oh!
Des Moines are going to be out there being the penultimate heavy cruisers just because of their weight of fire.
And you've got the
Um,
Alaskas as well as the other penultimate heavy cruisers. The
No,
opposite.
they're kind of in the super cruiser.
Yeah.
Um,
Light cruisers, Clevelands and Atlantas. I find it a bit weird the Brooklyns have gone this early. I find it a bit
they
weird.
don't have the anti-aircraft room to hold up.
So 23 Cleveland, 6 Atlantas. Wait, where are the oh wait, there's no Second World War, so there's no experience to lead to the ones with the 6-inch guns designed to counter the kamikaze threat.
Well, bombers.
What are you
but
referring to
like-
here, Fleet?
He's referring to the Worcesters. No, you might still see the
Right.
Worcesters. Everybody was, but the Worcesters aren't going to be out yet. Realistically, they had some trouble with their guns and turrets, but basically everybody was trying to go for the dual purpose 6-inch for the light cruisers.
Okay, this is where I start to ask interesting questions. So destroyers and submarines for the US, honestly, that's fine. This is where I start to ask interesting questions. Empire of Japan. Because from what I understand, the treaties still exist. And I've not seen anything to indicate differently from the British.
The treaties would have to not exist anymore for
No.
these fleets.
No, what I mean is...
The treaties collapsed.
Yeah, no, I get that, but the treaties existed. Which leads me to my next question. Why do the Japanese have the Tosas, the Keys, and the Amagis, and the British and Americans don't have any treaty-breaking ships?
The reuse of names.
But I find
Yeah.
it really odd that the Tosas and the Keys follow...
Fleet.
They're just reusing historical names for ships that would have came later.
Right. Why are the Amagis battle cruisers then?
Because they
Because they follow the Japanese naming principle.
Oh, all right, I suppose. I just
Hello.
that really threw me for a that.
I guess the question would be then if the battle. I don't know how the battle cruiser as a class of ship has evolved at this point. Assuming it has disappeared, a la our timeline, would they have then reused that name on a battleship instead? 'Cause I think
I wouldn't
what
say
the-
battle cruiser in this realm has disappeared yet.
I think you've got a couple still knocking around for everybody, mostly legacy
The-
vessels. I do find it weird.
What caused the battleship and battle cruiser to disappear so quickly after World War II was the sheer surplus to requirements that they broadly were, because there was nobody there was no threat navies left that had them. A lot of people like to bring up the Soviet light cruisers. Do you really need a battleship for light cruisers?
No.
Like, cost effectively as from a force design perspective, absolutely not. Particularly when, from the NATO perspective, you have the absolute horde of top tier US gun cruisers that exist.
Okay.
Well, that's a question.
But in this
well
time period, that is not the case.
Yeah. So
because the key class was basically their combination of them.
yes,
So
but
if
they aren't.
you would have to have the Amagis being before the Keys unified the doctrine.
Yes, but then that would mean they'd be under the treaty system. So how would that work?
Well, no, it wouldn't. Why would that?
No,
work?
Fleet.
What?
Don't
The Japanese-
assign these names to times.
Yeah.
They-
Right. So these could be Amagi 1940 and Key 1940, but we saw that Japan was trying, because they couldn't produce enough, to sort of semi-standardize on a fast battleship idea.
So it looks so from what.
So the question is, as they're saying, they're wondering if they should rename them to fast battleships,
Yeah.
because that's more the way the Japanese were leaning at the time.
I think I understand what's happened here. Well, first of all, I think the thing to do is get rid of the super battleship designation. Just have the Yamatos as battleships. Not dreadnoughts, not fast battleships, just battleships. And put them above... problem is... No, actually no. Lump the Yamatos into fast battleships. I don't care what Dr. Clark says. It makes it simpler to manage. And I assume the Yamatos go after the Congos, but before the Tosas. So the Japanese, I assume, try building the Yamatos, go, this is a waste of time, and then revert to building normal battleships again, rather than trying to basically break their economy and fleet construction by continuing to build stupidly large battleships. Unless the Tosas and Keys are Yamato successors. But they may not be. I don't know.
Honestly, the simplest solution would actually just be have some dates around them.
Yeah, yes. Add dates. Add
Yeah.
dates. Then we know what the score is. So just you don't have to do it now, but just in future, add dates to everything. That will really help future examination. So carriers, honestly, that's fine. Soryu, Shikaku, Hiryu, Soryu, Shikakus, Hiyos, Taihos, Unryus. Actually, hang on. The Unryus are an emergency war build class, unless it's again a case of name reuse, but it's a follow-on to the Taihos that's the large follow-on. The one they didn't actually build because of the war. I'm going to assume that that's the case. Honestly, this is a Japanese fleet that's not stupidly bloated, that I could believe they could just about maintain.
My main question on it is, could they actually build it in the time frame specified? Because the whole reason they went for the Yamato's fleet was because they had that many slips available.
I know, I'm aware.
So if you're
Honestly, sorry, go on.
like, to be honest, they're probably better served by just building more Yamatos
Honestly,
Also,
and then doing a Congo replacement.
I am
that-
also slightly questioning
I would ask-
Fusos, Iseis, and Congos because they are very old at this point.
honestly, yeah, I think the Fusos, Isis, and the Congos need to be gone. By the 1950s, they're not even worth, like, even the US and the British's B team is just gonna laugh hysterically while beating the ever living snot out of them.
Like, the moment the Iowas come out, the Congos have to be replaced. Just straight up.
Honestly,
Yeah.
my headcanon right now.
If Kiryu and Soryu would still be around as
Uh,
well.
Again,
Because
similar situation to the Yorktowns for the Americans. They're still
Second
capable.
Actually, no,
okay.
because the Japanese don't have the option. They have to keep them as frontline carriers. That said, I still maintain that when you're talking about the requirements for a carrier in the 1950s, Yorktowns that aren't beat up beyond all recognition from war service are going to be totally refittable. I mean, you probably wouldn't see the Yorktown Light in service anymore, but the three main Yorktowns, right? It was three of them. I'm not going insane, right? So, like, those aircraft, or the aircraft that are available, totally able to launch off and recover on them. I mean, the Tiger Cat's a little bit different, but they don't have to carry the Tiger Cat. And you're totally able to refit a Yorktown
You're probably looking at
to be
naval.
usable.
You're probably looking at aviation in this 1950, given probably a short 1-2 year war, being about where 1945 aviation was.
Probably not.
So
no.
in that case, then would Hiryu and Soryu have also been refitted?
So what do you think, Cyclic? What's your guesstimate here?
So, at least from the US perspective here, what you're going to see is the Wildcat gets replaced relatively quickly by the Corsair.
Not the Hellcat?
No, the Hellcat was a war expedience thing. It was never intended to be the replacement.
Right.
It was oh crap, we need more fighters now. The Corsair's taking too long. So there would have been several iterations of the Corsair in the fleet. After that, you're probably looking at, because realistically, the only way you're going to replace evolutions of the Corsair is something like the Bearcat. You're probably still going to look in the direction of the Sky Raider as the primary strike aircraft. A combined dive and torpedo bomber that is capable of carrying 2 torpedoes and enough ordnance on a single aircraft in a dive bomb attack to vaporize an unarmored carrier and cripple an armored carrier outright, because the Sky Raider is capable of carrying some obscenely large bombs.
Indeed.
And you're going to be looking. You're going to see the high fast kits for the torpedoes. Like that's just going to happen.
Yeah. So
Where
Yeah.
where would plane development go? I'm assuming you would
that
also
is a
use
can of
would say-
Royal Wing
worms.
Spit
Well,
from the British.
That's
I think
can
a
of-
number of them.
The
I do
Royal
think we
Navy
see
did
number-
have now
back
the
in a
Royal
second.
Navy's the Royal Navy's in a little bit different of a scenario because they've just been fighting a war. So we're probably going to see the Royal Navy not get the Seafire they wanted, which would have been not what people are used to in, like, when you think of a Seafire. We probably would have seen stuff a lot closer to what happened during the war with them. And what direction they decide to go post-war, I don't know. It depends on how close the relationship is to the U.S. and how close that grew during the war. Because if it sort of goes a similar way, it's entirely possible that the Royal Navy's Fleet Air Arm, immediately post-war, is a bunch of U.S. aircraft, because
Yeah, I don't think
there
it
just
would
wasn't
really
the
do
manufacturing.
anything either way, because from what I'm understanding of the scenario, it basically seems like U.S. versus Japan, and Britain, Germany, Italy versus everybody else is two separate conflicts.
I have
What
a.
I was understanding was the Pacific War hadn't happened yet.
I thought there has
The US
yes.
and Japan do not get to each other's throats.
Yeah, I thought that was the I thought that was the outcome. I do have something
Yeah,
to say
so-
regarding the Japanese, given
Mhm.
everything that we've said. Actually, it actually fits into what he's already created. I actually have a way that it makes sense.
Mhm.
So the Nagato,
Thank you,
so
daughters.
so you have the Nagatos, add a fourth Yamato, and then you have the Tosas, that are the follow-ons to the Yamatos, probably looking at trading 9/18s for probably looking to keep the same speed, add a fourth turret, because even the Japanese were looking at the 20-inch ships and going. And one of the reasons they were doing it is because they were going for war expediency and a desire to one-up. If there's no war, you're probably looking at the Japanese going with the option they wanted to go with, which was a fourth turret. So you're probably looking at four turrets for them, and then what you need to do then is the Amagi class will be the Congo replacements, which will be basically the Tosa class, but you drop a gun out of each turret, lengthen the hull slightly, make it finer, and push for 29, 30 knots with 18.1-inch guns.
Yeah,
So-
they have to match the Iowas somehow.
Yeah, so you have two of them in service, because again, we're following the Yamato slipways here. Two in service, Amagi and Ashitaka, and two building by 1950.
I
I'm
would
not-
be very
I think-
interested in a full write-up of the history in this scenario.
Yeah. The reason I say
I think something that'd
the
be interesting
reason-
is the jet development in the UK at the time.
the reason
Doesn't
sorry, go on.
Well, because at this point in time, jet development is at its height, and even before this, Britain was already well looking into jet aircraft.
True.
Britain wasn't the only one.
Yeah.
I know
Uh,
the US was looking into it as well. I think you could quite reasonably see a lot more jet aircraft potentially be done if there wasn't such a catastrophic war in certain regards.
How does the European War go? That's sort
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
But the reason, so just to go back to my point quickly, the reason I say two building is basically slips. And what Japan has available to build
Yeah.
ships of Yamato's size. So, but it's 1950 now. You have Yamato Musashi on the slips from 38 through 41. You have then Shinano in the second one, 41 through 43. Tosa and Ki, 43 through 46. Owari and Daisen, 46 through 48. Amagi and Ashitaka, 48 through 50. And then the other two ships are just now on the slips. So you've basically, that's why that works out the way it does. Because this
So
slips
the communists win the Spanish Civil War
that's
Spain is still not a viable.
and
combatant
unite with
in any
France.
war.
which, yeah,
If
congratulations.
anything, this is probably why
Okay,
France
that-
gets beaten so much.
Yeah, this is why France. This makes the war go faster for the Allies.
I mean,
Um,
that may be part of the whole timeline. That
Yeah.
the communists make a stupid mistake and get their asses handed to them for it. Wouldn't be the first time it's happened.
Even then,
Now we
The
come.
industrial amount of
I'd be
Germany
very,
that's not
very
autarkic.
interested in a full write-up of the entire history of this scenario.
Now we come to the bit that basically needs an entirely full rewrite. The German Empire. Because this is because this is the Nazi fleet, and this would not
No,
be the fleet the German Empire would have.
The other thing is them trying to build up a major fleet is not going to go well for them.
I would point out this is a German Empire that's worked with Britain and probably has gone back into the whole.
Still,
Like this is a German Empire that's in a place Britain is happy with. It's powerful enough to protect its own interests against anyone that isn't Britain, but it's not a threat to the Royal Navy. It's adopted the 2 capital ships a year they'd settled back into by 1912. But again, the thing I have a problem with here is that even if like you really do need to include specs for these ships, because all I can see here is Plan Z. Now these ships may be completely different to the fascist ships whose names they share. And also, then they wouldn't be KMS; they'd be SMS. KMS is Kriegsmarine. Even then, the Kriegsmarine didn't have prefixes. But
Kaiser Marine ship?
no, it's SMS.
I know, but if he wants to try and keep KMS,
no,
that's probably the only way you could do it.
yes, but you don't. You rename it. It's SMS. But yeah, so the German Navy needs a full rework. You're probably looking at. Let me see. How many? Okay, so RN has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're probably looking at 12 battleships, 4 battle cruisers for the Imperial German Navy. Powerful enough to be a comfortable rank 2 in Europe to the RN, but not so powerful as to threaten the Royal Navy in any significant way. Besides, the Germans are allied to the British at this point and have been for longer than 30 years. 50 years at least. I'm again with carriers. I have no problem with the carriers. I assume they are different designs with different
Germans
names.
have a use for carriers.
Again,
for covering their fleet far from home, protecting their overseas.
So it would be
Yeah.
very much a defensive carrier.
no,
I mean,
that's not what he means.
In this period, you don't see any difference.
And I would point,
competently defend
Cyclic.
carriers.
yeah, you're doing the breakup again.
Yeah.
Fuck's sakes! Is this my antivirus doing this?
Could be.
Craig's joke about y'all being viruses.
Very funny. Okay, first things first, while Cyclic is just dealing with that for a second. Large cruisers in the German Navy. No. The Deutschland class don't need to exist, the Runes don't need to exist. The German Navy has no need for large cruisers.
The German Navy has battle cruisers. The battle cruiser eliminates the need for large cruisers.
Unless you're the US, you can just go, haha, money.
Well,
no,
the US doesn't really
built
have
the
battle
large
cruisers.
cruisers because they didn't have
The US is
battle
running around with
cruisers.
a class of fast battleship.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Well, really
I don't-
fast battleship.
Yeah, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So, what was I going to say? It was German Empire. Oh, yeah, just in regards to the whole thing about Germany's carriers. Look at the, I'll post the map quickly that has been made. Look at the colonial
Okay,
possessions
Phoenix is
of
ready.
Yeah, okay. Look at the colonial possessions of this German Empire. Having carriers to project power from, let's say, German Indochina or German Madagascar is huge as a force multiplier in this period. Especially in this
year we talking?
1950, especially in this multipolar world.
In a alternate scenario that's been laid out for us.
So we get to examine it rather
the
than...
Germans get that?
Turkey is British?
Pardon?
Is Turkey British?
No,
No,
Turkey
I
is
think
Turkey.
it's undistinct.
Yes,
Just
How
a
the
slightly
hell did the
fella.
Germans get the Congo?
they nicked off with it because the Belgians apparently joined the French, I believe, from what I'm aware.
No, they were invaded.
So the British somehow ignored the Germans fucking about in Belgium.
Oh, no.
Okay, there's
No, the Belgians...
I think
I
there's
don't know.
there's a few too many different shades of red on this map. We need a few more colors.
No,
I
there's
totally
only...
thought Turkey was part of Britain.
No, Turkey.
Clearly, this should just all be various shades of red. There should be no shade other than red on this map.
Also based...
I just noticed America owning, is it Rio Grande? And Baja California?
Looks like the US slapped Mexico really hard in the Mexico-American War, which is not an unrealistic proposition, honestly. That's...
At that
Wait,
time
when?
frame, it very much is unrealistic.
Yeah.
I mean, what year did they acquire that? Because
No.
it's the
When I
historical
said...
Mexican-American War.
I mean, I know that there was a desire to basically nick off with the entirety of Mexico during the Mexican-American War, and it was literally
No.
and it was from what I've read, the U.S. Congress wanted it, the president wanted it. It was one diplomat who basically said, "Nah, I don't want to be mean to Mexico."
That was generally seen as an excellent way to start the American Civil War right then and there. It would have immediately caused a massive crisis over the issue of slavery, because you gotta keep in mind, for all expansions of the U.S. in this period before the Civil War, there was always a question of, is the state going to be a free state or is it going to be a slave state? So it was a very careful process every time a new territory was added to the Union and became a state and such. And so the massive influx of Mexican territory is going to be a massive complication, in addition to a massive influx of
at
Mexican
that point-
population, which was, to be blunt, for reasons of racism, was very much a contentious point in the United States at that point in time, because they did not
So-
want lots of Hispanics in the country.
The overall surface thing of, yes, we would like the territory. No, we don't want to deal with the consequences of actually getting it.
Fair enough. that
It
makes
wasn't
perfect
just
sense.
one diplomat.
All right,
but
all right,
wasn't that
I'll
actual in
sit-
like for specific bits like Baja, California. I remember reading
There's-
that.
There's not much there to be worth anything.
No. Let's just
Damn.
ignore.
Thank you.
Let's just
Scorpions.
ignore the US on. Let's ignore the map for now. The map's just there is a pretty bit of icon.
I think you do need a bit more color variation because, from a glance, some
stuff's too
similar, like-
map with labels.
no, that's World War II. That's not 1950. That's not what's called 1950.
What do you
Which I
mean?
presume the other one is.
Rhodesia doesn't exist.
Is that Turkey or the UK owning the what is that, Corfu and other Greek islands? No, actually, no, it's not Corfu. Never mind. This further down.
Again, they posted a map with labels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Again, we can't read that very easily.
I can read
Well,
bits
I'm
of it, but
well,
not
is it
all of
better
it.
than others?
Okay. I guess since I've got a 4K monitor, it makes it much easier to read.
Like,
on the
I'm
giant
looking
bloody
at it
screen.
on a 2K.
Yeah,
Dominion of
I'm doing
the
the same
Dominion
thing.
of Palestine.
Look, it doesn't look. Look, we're getting drawn into the map.
Italian Aegean Islands,
Let's
I
get
mean, that
back.
existed historically,
British
so-
Mediterranean.
Let's get back to the navies before we get.
Okay.
Look, the navies make sense. Let's actually get back to that.
Commune of Francos.
My thing
So-
is to understand the navies. I want to understand what the strategic considerations of each power is and what they need.
Well, for some,
Do we
for,
have a
for
write-up
some
on
of them, from some of them, it's not so hard. We don't have a write up yet, sadly.
Yeah.
But
Assuming
so
this is an alternate World War One or something like that.
yes,
Britain, Germany joined with Britain. I'll just bring up the full question. Alternate timeline: Britain joined up with Germany during the Great War due to Fashoda, not going into it, dragging Italy and Japan onto their side. They win hard. France goes communist with the Republican government exile in North Africa. A second world war occurs with the Republic being restored. The nationalists win the Chinese Civil War and a massive building program for the USSR and China. We also know that the communists won the Spanish Civil War and formed a united Franco-Spanish nation by the looks of it. That then got slapped in the Second World War.
This sounds like a Hoi mod, and that's not a good thing.
No. Look, anyway, can we look? I know
That's a good question,
I
Brackman.
sound like a broken
move
record
on.
here. So we're nearly there. So the Italians, not much to say about it. Although there is one interesting point here. Apparently, the Italians, in addition to building 3 Aquila class, which may just be a name reuse of purpose-built carriers, they bought a pair of Essex class. Oriskany and Hancock. I mean, it's not the worst idea I've ever heard.
But why would they buy carriers off the Americans?
They have no need to buy them in this time frame.
I know, they've built 3 of their own. Just get rid of the Essexes and add a 4th Aquila. French Republic battleships, dreadnoughts, the Leon class. Fast battleships, Dunkirk, Strasbourg, Richelieu, Gascogne, Lorraine. That's fine. I'm fine with that. Fleet carriers.
I'm just looking at where they are and going, are they really going to be able to support that big of a fleet off of that?
What else do is the Leon class?
Oh no!
historical Leon class?
I don't know. we're having this weird issue with names. But I would point out that this is the French Republic after Return. It's not the fourth French Republic in exile. It's
There again. I'm gonna look.
yeah. I feel like
They're not gonna be able to afford much.
yeah. I
Because
feel
Well, they're
gonna
busy
be
trying to
having to
re-establish
spend
themselves
elsewhere.
as a country.
yeah. I feel like the French Republic needs to lose the Lyons, the Dunkirks, the Richelieu's, and the Gascognes. I will accept, and also the Joffre class carriers. I will accept the pair of Essexes as donations/emergency buy-ins during the war, paid for with possibly British money,
Why would Britain pay that? Why would Britain do this?
to build up an ally. It's something they've done historically.
Wait, hang
Yeah,
on.
Yeah.
or they could get,
In this-
or they
in
could
this
get two
world's
carriers,
World
or they could get
in
two
this
carriers
world's
for themselves.
Yes, they can do.
War, in this
I
world's World War
don't
II,
think
who
so
would decide
because
World War II?
I would absolutely believe that Britain would want to make sure that the German Empire can't just run ragged over the rest of Europe.
Yeah, but they're allies with the Germans, from what I can tell.
That doesn't.
Yeah, but
just
even-
because you're allied
that
doesn't mean-
matter.
Yeah.
I still don't.
The
see
UK
them
is going to be
using
looking
British
at
money
it
to
as a
buy
balancing
carriers
thing.
for the French.
But carriers, again, Navy for this, particularly post-war, and even honestly during the war, there's no reason to build up their Navy. There's nobody to challenge
Yeah,
the
who's-
navies
Yeah, who's
of
who lets-
Germany
They're-
and the UK.
I
And on
think Phoenix
top
is
of
trying to
that,
use the-
post-war, the last thing the Fourth or Fifth French Republic, whatever you want to call it, is going to want to spend money on is something that isn't internal security related.
Because the communists will still have stay behind cells and other nonsense to deal
Well,
with.
not even stay behind. It's just they're dealing with. I mean, how long was the mainland of France communist?
Basically, from I believe immediately after the First World War ended in whatever that probably 1917, 1918 till 1942-3.
So yeah, no, like they might have a single carrier group, and that's their navy.
That's assuming they build carriers.
Oh,
Well,
no,
I'm not even
buy
saying
in.
build, like from
Buy in.
either the
Oh, right.
British or the Americans, whoever.
If
It's-
anything, I see the British trying to sell them one of the light fleet carriers. I don't see them trying. The British buying an Essex to give to France.
Yeah,
Without
honestly-
Yeah, I don't see
Depends
that.
on-
Yeah,
that would
it
be
really
my.
depends on what the
if
threat
they're
picture
doing
is after
that,
the
if
war.
they're basically donating a carrier, it would be one of their own.
honestly,
But I can absolutely see them
yeah,
doing
the French,
something like that,
yeah,
so
the-
that they've got some ability to make sure the Germans don't just roll in someday and take over France.
Well, that's
honestly,
more of an army thing than a navy
Yeah,
thing.
that case
Yeah.
carriers are irrelevant. I mean, this
Yeah.
is really the big thing. It's why do they need carriers in the first place? What's security question? Because, for example, if we
they've
look at
lost their
post-war
colonial
France
empire.
historically, post-war France historically, the reason to get carriers was because they were fighting they were fighting in Vietnam to try and keep the Vietnamese under their boot. That was the big reason. That's why the United States gave them their carriers immediately after the war, and
All
supported
they
them
have
in that
here is
action.
North Africa.
Yeah, and and even afterwards, the carrier question was always basically, we have to fight abroad, and also we'll contribute against the ASW fight against the Soviets in the Atlantic. But that was kind of it. I mean, the carriers is a form of national power projection that really develops later in the 20th century. Versus when if we're talking 1950 immediately. In fact, 1950 a lot of times in the 60s, a lot of the discussion around carriers is going to focus around, say, ASW. Historically speaking, for our world, this world's different. This is where my question kind of becomes: who was on what
We're just-
side in
we're
the
just being
Second
given
World
that
War,
Phoenix.
and afterwards, who's okay?
Phoenix, look in theater. It's
I
okay.
asked it for you earlier because it seemed like you were trying to ask that for a few times. All I'm going to say is, what did they do to annoy that many people?
Okay, so hang on. So
Like-
the World War II is between the Allies and the Communists. So post World War II, now that we're talking, what's post World War II? What's the actual balance? Who's the world split between essentially?
You seem to
It
have
depends.
a multipolar world where a lot of nations are, oh yeah, we're allies, quote unquote.
This isn't
But-
really. This isn't. This isn't multipolar fleet.
This is very much a multipolar.
This is, you have two allied camps. What I'm seeing here from these, because the Soviet Union is not a part of the big war, you have probably the US and UK group against the Soviets and whoever they're deciding to build back up.
I don't think
Because
so.
the Soviets are going to be even without Ukraine, a massive problem in Eastern Europe for the German Empire. And I suspect a bunch of those Eastern European countries aren't going to like the Germans too much,
Either.
just based on historical precedent. They're not necessarily going to like the Soviets too much, but the Soviets can at least go, "We're a new man," quote unquote.
Yeah, but do you trust the new man that you don't know enough of, or someone that you at least know how they're going to probably act?
It's also Stalin's Soviet
That would be
Union.
my thing domestically, were I in those
Yeah.
countries. However, when you look
Would a lot of-
at influence campaigns over history, those questions aren't always the best way to fight those campaigns.
No, that's true.
I could see the USA and the USSR going at it just between themselves. But I considering there was just a massive war, I really don't think the British, the Germans.
Problem is, it wasn't a massive war.
Gonna
It
get
was the
It
entire
was
world.
far smaller than World War II was
It's the
in Europe, and they just knocked out the previous
Just
communist
got
threat.
into
There's
war.
another
So
one
they-
coming back up.
They would be more interested in rebuilding their economies. I really don't think the Germans or the British are going to want to get involved.
I don't think their economy's been
they
that
have a
heavily
choice.
hit,
They
though.
didn't want to get involved historically either, but they had to.
Also, we've now been given the post-war factions.
Okay, so this is interesting. I mean, I think looking
Wow,
at these
Japan is playing nice. Fucking.
So basically, the NATO equivalent faction has all of the naval powers to the point
Oh,
where
so this is
really
this is after the USA and Japan throw down.
No,
They don't throw down.
They never fight at all.
if your Warsaw
He,
Pact
he
is
said
the
this is
Soviets-
after the Far East one.
What
Yeah,
the
Far
heck
East
is-
is referring to the whole situation.
Okay, so what the heck happened with Japan then?
Nothing.
As far as we're
Well,
aware
like,
right
what I'm
now,
trying to figure out is
nothing.
how they got into that? Why are they there?
Because of the fear of communism.
Probably. Yeah, China and
Just
Russia.
straight up. You have the PRC, who's not fully defeated. You have the giant elephant in the room that is the Soviet Union.
No, the PRC is fully defeated. It's gone. But there's an ultra nationalist, very angry China in its place.
Okay, well,
gray-green
there's
blob between looks like China and I assume that's Manchuria.
Yes, that grey-green blob is the Menjiang state,
Triangle.
a Chinese I think that collection of the Menjiang state, state of Manchuria, and the Tsar of Vladivostok is a collection of Chinese puppet states.
Gotcha. Okay.
Sorry, not Chinese. Sorry, Japanese puppet states. That China is very that nationalist China is very, very angry about. I would assume.
so okay. Instead of there being the PRC, it's this very, very, very nationalist China, who's also a threat to Japan. So they have a dual threat there, as far as they're concerned. Like.
Yeah, this world's tripolar. You've got the democracies / Western aligned governments, and I'm assuming since Japan is stuck with Britain all this time, that we're looking at a Japan that must have quashed the extreme elements of its militaries at some point in the 20s.
Is relatively democratic.
Yeah, so we're looking at a Japan that's quashed the extremist elements of its militaries.
Somehow, but okay, we'll accept that.
See, the funky thing here, the way I'm looking at this world, this is one of those worlds where the post-war is going to be very one-sided, and it's not going to become a very big. The whole like tripolar nature of the world is not going to really come into effect until considerably further down the line, because
Yeah.
the Soviet ability to build up a credible navy is going to be severely reduced in the state they're in, so it'll take a lot longer.
And
if you're looking
they're a
at-
ground threat to
Yeah, they're
the
primarily
sort of
ground
Slavic
threat.
rim.
Yeah.
Pakistan,
Yeah.
forget about it. The Balkans and the Middle East, forget about it. They're irrelevant for a naval question as far as their own ability to develop anything. The the ultra-nationalists, likewise, India, China have the potential decades down the line. When I say decades, I mean like it'll be a credible issue in the
90s.
21st century.
90s
India
and into
might.
the
So also,
21st.
this is intriguing. So India breaks from Britain in this,
Seems to be.
and then join
Oh
a
no!
faction that.
Oh no!
very-
From what I'm aware, the ultranationalist governments aren't a faction. It's just they're very much
In
nationalistic.
So they break away.
They're
in
literally
1940.
listed as a faction fleet.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
So I'm assuming they are in the faction. Yeah, they just confirmed they are in a faction. So
Well, that's horrifying. China
Hmm.
and India together—that's a horrifying amount of potential.
I'm more curious though.
That's a problem
no,
for the
this is good.
21st century, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I would still wonder why and how. Why are they working together?
That's a very good
Yeah.
question, but
I mean,
That's
what I-
why
they may not
I
even
still
necessarily
want
have to
know.
work too
Right,
closely together. Like,
Oh, sweet Jesus!
And this is what happens after this
I
whole
can
shenanigans.
see-
Good lord, that's the Russians going absolutely ham in the Central Asia.
that is utterly unsurprising to me.
Wait, you
utterly
expected something like
unsurprising.
that?
Yes, the Soviets have that capability in Central Asia. Nobody can stop them in this setup.
They've also nicked
Um,
off with a good chunk of Manchuria as well.
Yes.
what happened? Did Egypt just do? Hang on, is that Egypt? I don't even.
Yeah, I assume that's a no. That may not be Egypt.
Wait,
that
why
may be
is
the United...
why is the Italian possession and the British possession in Africa joined?
Oh,
And
that's
why is it under?
If they were allies,
I think. Where? Where do you mean?
Do you see the
Look.
massive
What the
yellow
heck
blob in
happened?
North Africa?
do you see the massive yellow blob right there?
I assume.
That's-
I assume that's the United. Yep, I assume that the United. Sorry, the UAE, the United Arab. No, not sorry, not United Arab Emirates. NASA's pipe dream. That one.
So, what, did the British and Italians agree to just like give the state over to them, or?
Judging by the way the borders are, I think the situation is ongoing.
Because I was gonna say like, they
That
They don't
would
really
be
have the
such a
capacity to fight on their
one-sided
own.
stomp unless they get
Soviet
like some
support.
really big.
Yeah.
The Soviets can't do that. They don't. They were not going to have the naval capability until, honestly, never. That would have to have been the U.S., and the U.S. isn't likely to do that.
Would there be a decolonization in this timeline?
Yes.
Well, let's look decolonization, but look at all the colonies that remain.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's very
what I'm-
odd that, like, say for example, because I will say flat out, the Italians will probably be more willing to give up the Italian East Africa territories than they will, Tunisia especially, but also Libya, especially Libya at this point in time, because it's going to become a massive source of oil wealth. And you got to remember that Libya is the Italians are going to not necessarily immediately, but they will in the coming decades start treating northern Libya like and Tunisia like the way the French did with Algeria, where they called it like the French metropole and such. It was part of France, core part of France, just because of the sheer amount of Italians that were being moved over to Libya. Tunisia already had a large Italian population. It's why it was like jokingly referred to as an Italian colony administered by the French. But Libya is going to be very much a case of there are going to be a lot of Italians there relative to the Libyan population, and that's not a very good recipe for when it comes to say a existential conflict with say over who controls the territory.
You're not solving this well by northern Tunisia stays with Italy.
If
It's also, like, what is in southern Tunisia?
Yeah, if this uprising occurs, I don't care if there's been a crisis where the British and the honestly, if there's been a crisis where the Japanese, British, Italians, French have been humbled, do you really think they're going to let an uprising stand? No, they're going to go in, guns blazing, and slap the buggers across
Not unless like the U.S. steps. The U.S. is going to be the only nation that can step in like that. And realistically, with the Soviet Union gobbling up land across Asia, presumably working Eastern Europe into its sphere.
You're being a bit robotic again, Cyclic.
It's freaking stupid.
Yeah, didn't mean to interrupt, but I thought you'd at least want to know that.
Yeah, I
Island should
would.
exist.
All right, it's better. It's something to do with Discord itself.
It's still very robot-y.
This is still very robotic.
Okay, it's to do with Discord
that's what
itself.
happened.
Yeah, it's something on Discord's end. I'm not
Oh, you're having me
rebooting
syndrome.
my PC is not going to do anything, Timu.
Yeah. This is what happened to me a while ago. Just very quickly, I've gotten to the Soviet fleet. Trim it. That is farcically too large for the period we're in. I don't care that it's 1950. They should not have 6 Sovietsky Soyuz class.
So keep in mind, in our timeline, right? And yes, the Soviets had the war to worry about, and that did impact them greatly. They still would not have been built up as a major naval power until the 80s, regardless. The reset that helped them was the reset with missiles. Until that happens, and, we're not talking about that for a considerable amount of time.
Like, I'll grant them a pair of Sovietsky Soyuz and the Kronstadts, but they should all. But
I'm
they
not
should-
sure I'd even do that.
But I'm also going to say this: they should not have the 4 carriers they have. No, absolutely not. 1 experimental light carrier, perhaps, to train up crews, but that's it.
I would actually say their carriers would be the easier thing for them to get into. Far easier. You don't have to build the thick armor plate, you don't have to build the guns, and you're already doing aircraft.
Yeah, and they're going to want
Who
quite a
helps them
lot.
get there though.
And I presume in this situation, they're not in a situation where there is one mega idiot in charge of their military-industrial complex.
I think Stalin still exists.
So you are going to get the obsession with battleships.
Yes, Stalin does still exist.
Carriers were capitalist, anyways. But I think there's also going to be a question of who's really helping them, because you got to remember the Soviet naval buildup prior to World War II, for example, was very, very significantly helped by the fact the fascists in Italy were willing to do business with them. The Germans, as they were engaged in the Weimar Republic as well in its post-war revisionism efforts, was working with the Soviets. The Nazis did, obviously, very infamously. Otherwise, technical contacts were limited. There were still some with the Western Allies, but otherwise it was relatively limited up to the start of World War II. And then after World War II, there was a lot of benefit the Soviets gained from the sheer amount of equipment the Allies threw at the Russians, including things like that are sensitive, like radars and sonar systems. Yeah. And then, they also were able to reap the technical benefit of all the crap they stole from Germany, because they had their own version of Operation Paperclip. They also did a ton of research with all the German vessels they captured. I mean, a lot of like 1950s area Soviet-built ships are very much relying on Axis technology. The surface fire control systems for the main guns is Italian. The dual-purpose fire control computers for their AA guns and the directors are all based on German designs or not direct knockoffs of German designs. I mean, they were very much. I mean, they needed a lot of foreign input to get where they were. I don't know where they would get that in this timeline.
Exactly. Something else I also
even
have to
communist France is going to be going through its own troubles in this period and may not be able to supply a lot.
Yeah,
we don't know how much of France's infrastructure is even left after.
And I would also point out, communist France may
they
not
don't
be
have
willing
an easy way to get it to them.
And I would also point out that communist France may not be willing to work with the Soviet Union, given they might be doing different styles of communism or socialism, and they may hate each other's guts. What I will also say is,
let Phoenix speak.
Sorry.
You may also have the case where, the Soviets initially try and control the French Communist Party, because they did try and do that with various European countries and their communist parties. Some of them successfully, some of them told them to go screw themselves. But that could also be a point of contention between the Soviets and the French communists. So.
Okay, so what I will say is, I was going to say, damn right. Get rid of the Hipper. She should not be there. Well, first of all, the Hippos shouldn't even exist in this timeline. The circumstances that led to their birth don't exist. The German Empire will not touch the Russians with a 10-foot pole because it's the German Empire. They're the Soviet Union. They are existential level land threat number 1. Like, the French have already had their head bashed in once. We know we can do that again. The Russians are still there. But yeah, so the Russian Navy needs a full rewrite. That's all I'm going to say. The Chinese Navy, no. No.
There's no way to...
No. They should not have any battleships, battle cruisers, carriers. No. Just absolutely not. They have light cruisers, destroyers, and submarines. Maybe they have a pair of battleships being built overseas from somebody at this point.
Who's going to be willing to build them for them?
Yeah, honestly,
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Who would take the orders?
I don't know how soon I would expect the Chinese to have modern destroyers. Period. They might be working with a very limited fleet. I mean, if you look at, post
and the bulk of their effort's going to be pointed north on land and in the air.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the China, like historically speaking, Chinese navies, right? The post-war Republic of China, right? We threw various vessels at them just to keep them going in the face of the communists, but even then it was basically destroyers, destroyer escorts. They didn't get anything big. I mean, I think the largest thing they actually got was the British tried to give them like a light cruiser that.
Oh no, they got a heavy cruiser.
Communists.
No, they got a heavy cruiser. They got a County, I believe.
No, God no.
No, I'm fairly certain they did.
I don't believe so.
Wait,
no.
what? Say again, sorry?
The lightest they got was an Arethusa class light cruiser, one of the 6
Yeah.
light cruisers.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they didn't get a county.
They did not get a county, no.
What?
Yeah, no, they didn't get a county.
But
Fair enough.
and likewise, the communist. I mean, and it was essentially that and whatever they got, like from as reparations from Japan, which were fairly limited because most, the Allies scrapped most Japanese vessels rather than have them given over. I think destroyers.
They're not.
were the only
Japan
ones.
is not going to have the room to build battleships for them,
and
Japan is not
anyway.
going to give them their old ones.
No. So yeah, the Chinese fleet is light cruisers, destroyers, and submarines. That's acceptable. I can accept that. Neutral nations, the remnants of the Austrian Empire. Okay, here's where I have things to say because as you all know,
They shouldn't have land access.
as you all know, it seems like they have a strip to access the sea, presumably to one of their naval bases. If that's the timeline, I'm going to work with it. What I will say is this. First of all, the Tegetov class should be gone. They should have battleships, but it should just be a pair of ersatz monarchs. Just
Red Sea class, 3
just-
dreadnoughts perhaps.
Just a pair of ersatz monarchs with the other pair having gone to provide spares to keep this pair going. Soldering on as the last
Tegetovs
battleships.
are bad.
Yeah, and they wouldn't have been kept. Like the Austrians would have scraped together whatever they could to complete the ersatz monarchs, and then had them solder on as the 4 battleships of the Imperial fleet. Like that's the way it would be.
So I think zoom in on exactly
Again
where we're
with
looking at here.
the heavy cruisers. Those are, I think, I'm okay with the heavy and light cruisers because those are the cruisers the Austrians are building towards the end of the war, and again, the Austrian Navy is at this point a fleet on life support, basically cannibalizing other ships of the classes that are now nearly several decades old to keep the other ones running. So I'm happy for you to have the cruisers and heavy cruisers and light cruisers as 5 and 10, but there should be in brackets actual operational number 2 and 4, with the others basically being spares donors to keep the other ones running.
They did collapse in 1927.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Honestly,
so that makes
I-
complete sense.
Don't think they're going to be able to operate. Looking at what territory they have, probably nothing larger than a very, unless discounting maybe they hang on to some of the old protected or scout and armored cruisers, probably nothing larger than a destroyer because they just don't have any naval facilities there. I can't
hang
even
on.
know if they kept
I
Fiume,
think. Hang
but
on, let me have a look.
they have. But even if they kept Fiume, that means they have no capacity to keep any capital ships and no large cruisers of any kind. That's going to be if they bother keeping a navy. I'm assuming Austria is just this white space of Austria here.
Yes.
If they bother keeping a navy, that's going to be like torpedo boats. Maybe if they're feeling like splurging, they're going to get some like modern destroyers or something like that built somewhere else. But they're basically going to be even worse situation than Yugoslavia was after World War One.
Yeah, they don't have.
They're not going to have a navy
there
that
aren't
matters
the
at all.
ports for that with where they have territory.
Well, next thing for the neutral nations, Republic of Chile. I can believe Almirante Latorre being there. No, they should not have the Resadaya class Erin. No, they should not have Tiger. No, they should not have 2 Essex class carriers. No, they should not have 2 Hawkins class cruisers. No, they should
The
not have the
lithium
Sea
triangle
class.
is not a thing yet. They do not have the money, honey.
They have Almirante Latorre and a Brooklyn. Republic of Finland.
Finland is not going to have a meaningfully large navy. It is not their priority.
There's a reason why this is
How
not a
many
very big.
Enterprise spaceships do they have?
Ice-breaking battleship.
Right, they're called icebreaking, but I don't think these are battleships as we traditionally
I
consider.
Even a coastal defense battleship is
Is
out
this
of.
Finland before the Great Hyperborean War?
Yeah,
Or-
look, they have the Vaimonen class. They do not have the Hippers. And how the hell do they have Blucher? No. They don't have They don't need light cruisers. They don't need armored cruisers. They don't need heavy cruisers. They have the 2 coast defense ships, a small number of modern destroyers, and submarines. That's it. Bulgaria having battleships? No.
They apparently
Bulgaria?
bought an Iron Duke. Huh.
No. No.
Bulgaria is at most going to have like a small coast defense vessel.
No. You know what? I will give the Bulgarians 2 Hawkins class if they want to have nothing else.
2 Hawkins class cruisers that have never been operational since they were first
Yeah,
handed over.
so no.
We'll take that.
Yeah, the
Where's
Bulgarians.
the Bulgarian economy in this
you know
period?
what? You know
You know,
what?
this reminds me of something.
You know
Dirt
what?
farming.
I'll accept the 2 Dido class as Bulgarian flagships, given they might have a stronger economy in this, and they seem to be larger.
Nations International City of Antwerp. What am I looking at?
I don't want to think about that. Moving swiftly onwards.
Where am I?
Did Bulgaria
Okay,
have it?
now we come to a navy that I actually think is smaller than it should be, and is lacking
Bulgarians didn't have anything
and
lush in
and-
speedo boat,
and-
holy fuck.
and is actually lacking assets I think it should have. The Netherlands. They have 2 battle cruisers and only 1
Oh,
carrier.
they still have their.
They have 2 battle cruisers and 1 carrier. And they only
What do they have for escorts for that?
they have 1 De Ruyter, 2 Javas, 2 Tromps, and the 2 Zender Provincian, 8 of the Admiralen class destroyers, and 4 Gerald Kallenberg class destroyers.
So I'll be honest here. Those ships need to be replaced with foreign purchases. They are, if we're talking 1950, those things are so hilariously out of date. It's like bringing an ironclad to Jutland.
Who are the
Honestly,
Dutch aligned with?
yeah. So the coast defense ships need to go. The carriers and battle cruisers can stay. You need to get rid of De Ruyter, Java, and Tromp. Add another pair of Descender Provincians, and then
No. If they're the same ships, no.
But those were fine cruisers when they were finished.
When were they finished?
In the 50s.
Are we talking about those cruisers,
the
or are we
modern
talking about the
ones.
other?
Or is this
The
just a
modern
name?
ones.
This is
are
one
they?
thing I want to know, and I want to hear this from the person.
Yeah. Are the Dezeven Deprovencian classes the modern ones? Yes. those
Okay,
ones.
if they're the modern ones, then that's different.
So we'll probably have 2 of. So we've got 2 of them. Add another 2 since the Dutch will want to retain their building capabilities. If they can build at home, they won't build abroad. And then honestly, add another class of ship. Guy, what would the next, if the Dutch were to build another class of 6-inch cruiser, say 1946? What would the class name have been?
Probably.
That could be pretty much anything, surely.
Yeah,
are
it can
they
be pretty
aligned
much
with?
anything.
So just call them.
You can go for a second De Ruyter, you can go for another Tromp, like they can just
Honestly, yeah. Go with De Ruyter. Makes sense. Yeah, go with a second De Ruyter. and say we'll have two of them building to try and bring up another class of 4 cruisers, because that then means they've got enough to put, a pair of cruisers with each of the capital ships.
Question.
Yep.
Who are they aligned with, and who do they see as their likely foe?
Apparently the Dutch are neutral, but they're probably leaning aggressively heavily with weights attached to one side of them towards the NATO camp.
The reason I would honestly say a single carrier, a single battle cruiser, the cruisers and destroyers to escort that, because I assume they have foreign possessions still, because
Dutch East
the whole
Indies.
Japanese thing. Yes. Because they're going to be in their navy's entirely going to be focused around colonial protection policing.
Why would you keep the capital with the big gun battleships or battle cruisers?
Because in this 1950, you still have battle cruisers around. You still have fast cruisers around. You still have fast battleships. You still have those heavy forces around.
Yes,
this hasn't gone away yet.
Everybody who's going to be operating those that are a threat to the Dutch East Indies are going to be other NATO countries, in which case, if they go to war with you, you might as well just surrender, because you're just screwed.
Yes, but that doesn't mean you get rid of your... I know that the Soviet Navy might be anemic, but here's the thing. If the Soviets show up with I don't know, a pair of cruisers to say, look, we're support... No, let me finish. Let me finish. If the Soviets show up with a pair of cruisers to show the flag around the region, just because they can, it's very much more intimidating for the Dutch to rock up and shadow them with their battle cruiser or a carrier group than the Dutch to also show up with a pair of light cruisers. It's all about the message you send to your subjects.
If the Soviets could even do that.
Well, let's just rewind. So you have a point there, but it's again the question of the type of ships. Like carriers, they're multi-role. They're like for a post-World War II, in 1950s, whatever. The carriers make perfect sense because they can do a lot of different tasks. The big gun capital ships just really don't make sense in my mind. Because most likely,
unless you're a top-tier navy in this period,
exactly, they are probably going to be something that you have to pick between those and having carriers and a significant cruiser fleet, because they're expensive. The Dutch are not made out of infinite money, and I don't really see them being able to afford to keep up this like massive fleet. Considering, if you look at the kind of like force projections they were looking at, say historically speaking. It just seems a little bit way up into fantasy tier. Especially given that this world seems to be a lower threat level for them post-conflict than say we saw in post World War II with the Soviets, right? I mean, the Dutch, especially because the Dutch were still fighting to keep control of the colonies, they had a much bigger reason to keep up their naval force, and they did keep significant naval force during the Cold War. But they had a lot to worry about compared to this time frame, where basically the security of their colonies is basically a big chunk of it is basically no one is going to start shit around that region, because then the NATO, or whatever we're going to call the NATO alliance that isn't NATO in this world, is going to absolutely rock them. I mean, the Soviets are going to credibly say threaten or show the flag around the Dutch East Indies, which you can show up with the carrier group anyways to show the flag yourself. And B,
or a cruiser division of your own that just happens to already be based there.
I would actually imagine that one of the carrier groups was going to be based out of there, because the Dutch were looking at.
I mean, the Dutch only have one carrier. They have 2 battle cruisers, which are presumably the 1047s, and a single carrier.
No. If you're talking about 2 battle cruisers, give them 2 carriers and no battle cruisers.
Okay.
Just straight up.
The problem is the Dutch. The problem is the 1047s would have been built, and from what I can see, the carrier's an Evertsen class, which probably means they cancelled the last ship and converted her into a carrier.
So were the Dutch under threat from the British and Japanese before the war?
Unlikely.
So why did they build the battle cruisers?
I mean, we have the. Well, I will. Oh, the French. Apparently, they were under threat from the French. Well, in that case, then they wouldn't build battle cruisers. They would build it on the board. In that case,
the concern is so much closer to home.
Yeah, like if you are going,
Yeah.
first of all, if you're going to build naval vessels to fight the French, they are a pair of somewhat slow 25-knot battleships with the biggest guns and thickest armor you can give them.
And even then, that's not worth it.
No,
Because
it's not
you
worth
as
it.
a smaller nation have to pour everything into your army
Yeah.
and air force.
Yeah, the Dutch should, in that case, then the Dutch fleet should be their old crew, should have just the 2 de Zeven Provincia class cruisers and possibly some of their more modern older cruisers, because it should be basically only just now getting funding. Maybe at this point, maybe in the 50s they're negotiating with Britain to buy a light fleet at this moment. Now that the continental threat has subsided.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think the whole thing with this whole scenario
Back in a
is
second.
everyone's trying to reach for reasons to bulk up their fleets, but quite frankly, I think everyone is going to have smaller fleets than historically speaking, because we're not really looking at a very significant naval war. All the major almost all the major naval powers are on the same side in most of these conflicts. So, like it's after the First World War conflict. So it's going to be kind of a slapfest where nobody really needs, like the Americans and the Japanese don't have much of a reason to build up their fleets unless they're eyeing each other. Likewise, the British building program can be considerably less expansive if they don't have to worry about, say, dealing with, Germany and Japan and Italy in the interwar period. If it's just the French and just communist France, which keep in mind is going to be tearing itself apart and doing purges, and that is going to severely delay the French naval recovery, which was already had enough issues after World War I, historically speaking, to where, frankly, the French are probably going to have a just flatly inferior fleet to, say, the Italians by the time of the World War II, by the time of 1940 in this timeline, because they were almost at that point, historically speaking, when France is in a much better position for recovery versus what versus this alternate timeline. So I think this is really one of those things where you're going to see most navies have, or most nations, smaller navies overall, and probably less focused on fleet action. I mean, you might see a lot more of the major navies.
You'd see the U.S. and Japanese build up because they were eyeing each other, but then it's not going to go past the Two Ocean Navy Act. The Two Ocean Navy Act is going to put that competition to bed.
Mm-hmm. Right. Also, do we want to consider wrapping this one up? Because we have been going at this for like an hour 15.
Yes.
Yeah.
On this single question.
Progress here.
Like, yeah. I keep being asked, what question are we on? And the fact I haven't been able to say for an hour that we've changed question.
Yeah, let's move on.
I was enjoying it.
It's a decent enough question, but like maybe come back to it at the end if there's no other questions, but at least try and get through some of the others first.
All right. Don't.
This is not. I swear this is not because there's a couple of questions near the end that are very much my interest.
That is entirely why this is the.
Well, also because genuinely, I think over an hour is.
I think we're kind of starting to beat the dead horse on this one in a couple top points. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Swiftly moving on.
Where are we? Sufficiently nautical arse. I heard on Chieftain's YouTube channel that the first mechanised amphibious assault was in Cork during the Irish Civil War. Is that a fair classification of the Free State's retaking of Cork? Were there any lessons learned for future operations?
Also, you missed one, by the way.
I would call it a mechanized amphibious landing.
I didn't.
Not an assault.
No, I didn't.
Because they landed the armored cars via cranes at the port from docked ships.
Yeah.
So, yeah, landing. And contrary to popular belief, there is a big difference between an amphibious assault and an amphibious landing. But I've gone into that on this. Moo's gone into that on this before, so I won't beat that dead horse again.
I think the Chieftain even talked about it during the ramblings where I had him on. Though that was a couple of years ago now. I see what you mean, Dragon. Your typical gunnery officer asked, did the French plan to have F4Fs on board Bern? I honestly don't know.
No.
They were busy looking up and going, man, that's a nice fighter. Wish we had those.
Now the F4Fs were for Joffrey. Byrne was just going to be transported. She was not suitable as a frontline carrier by the late 1930s, and the French understood that. She was basically just going to be performing in the transport role, and that was basically it.
I knew that much. I was just wondering, is Baron even large enough for an F4F to take off?
Probably
to
not.
be honest.
Probably not.
Let alone her
Well,
elevators.
given you can take F4Fs off from the
Oh no, he has a point.
escort carriers,
Yeah, he's got a point.
Yeah,
How fast
sure.
could the escort carriers go again?
not
That
very
would-
fast.
I was going to say 'cause
They
that
were
would
merchant
be the case
ships
of, you
with
know,
triple expansion engines. Like,
where you even take off from too, because they have the stupid thing with the arresting wires in
Yeah.
midship.
Also,
Warface carrier just
are
says
the
stuck.
actual elevators on Burn big enough for her? For F4Fs?
Probably.
Well, theoretically, that's something that could probably be refit.
very expensively,
her
but for
elevator
reference, a
had a lot
boat
of
could do a
cost.
whopping 18
Yes,
knots.
it would be expensive and definitely not worth it, but theoretically,
So they
it's
probably
possible.
would. I agree with things. They probably just go straight to Joffrey.
I think you would have to you'd have to rip out so much of the ship to do that, because these are not. Hang on, I have a diagram. Stop scrolling like that. Holy crap! Sorry, my mouse is fighting me right now. Let's see. Can I turn that sideways? Will it let me? I forget.
Oh
PDF.
wow, the commencement bay and Casablanca classes got up to a whopping 19 knots.
My goodness, Cyclic, stop! The speed is too much! Can it possibly get any faster?
You know, you can outrun most ironclads. Good God.
Okay, wow, okay, so we've got a good gap of questions. So that's very good. Habity.
Hibbity, get the fuck off my property. Wait, what?
Bloody hell, Cyclic. You typically going to ask, question 3. Do you think the Clemson and Wicks class came a bit too late for World War 1 and would be a good destroyer design for World War 1 if they came into... What did I miss?
How mad would the US Marines go if they could get a nuclear-armed M50 on toast?
They'd probably be questioning how.
Davy Crockett's question mark?
Oh, nuclear armed, not nuclear driven. Right.
No.
Sorry, for a second there.
No, I don't want to think of that.
Nuclear armed Ontos. I mean, in theory, you can, if you really, really squeeze, you can miniaturize a warhead enough to fit into a 105 mil recoilless shell.
Just put a Davy Crockett on a tripod, set it up so that you can fire it and take off immediately in your Jeep. Your effective firing range for a recoilless rifle launched nuke is like
too small.
4 kilometers at most.
Yippee! That's all I could see at that point.
You do not want to be inside an Ontos there because you are not firing it and getting away, preferably over a terrain feature.
Just dead.
Okay, what if
Now,
you park
even
it
though
on
the
a
blast
slope?
yield is only 20 tons, it's quite a small warhead. You don't want to be using it. It also, like, there's a reason it kind of, well, as a weapon didn't, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Moving onwards, where was I? Oh yes.
Question 3
Oh, yeah.
from Gunner Officer.
Your Canadian officer asks, do you think the Clemson and Wicks class came a bit too late for World War 1 and would be a good destroyer design for World War 1 if they came into service in 1916? Yes! Oh my god, yes!
Now I have the controversial opinion that I don't think the Clemson is as good of a design as some people say, but for 1916 it would be brilliant.
Which is
I do think they came a bit too late,
not that much later. They were only 2 years later.
but by that point in time you're already seeing much better destroyers coming into designs.
What much better destroyers?
For one, the A-class destroyer from the Brits. That was in development, but at this point, which is bigger, better main battery layout, better torpedo layout. Not as many torpedoes,
Better
admittedly,
sea-keeping
but
layout.
yeah.
Fair
Like,
enough.
But Clemson's proposed upgrades to get dual guns did not help their stability. But
Fair
for
enough.
1916, that'd be great.
Fair enough. AMC Woods asks, what if the Iranian Air Force went with the Eagle instead of the Tomcat? How much does the air part of the Iran-Iraq war go, or does it not really change?
So, fun fact, they didn't select one or the other. They went with both. They just got the Tomcats first because they needed the Tomcats for the intercept role. They just never got down the F-16, F-15 line, and F-18 as well.
Assuming they get an equivalent number of F-15s as well as the Tomcats, the Iraqi Air Force is... You're fucked!
I mean, the Iranian Air Force suffered from a lot of problems in the war. It was not one-sided. It wouldn't have been one-sided even with the F-15. If they got F-15s, we probably would not have 100 plus an O jet in the West. If I'm honest. That air war wasn't like popular conception of it. There were a lot of cases where Tomcats got shot down or seriously damaged where they should not have been at all. That war was very rough on their Tomcat fleet. It was very rough on their Phantom fleet. But not because of platform reasons.
No.
That war was very much a war of incompetence on both sides.
Yeah, that was not a fun conflict. From YouTube, Knight6831 asks, why would the Soviets even need a Sukhoi Su-33 RS, a two-seat carrier-based reconnaissance and target designation aircraft? Well, to do the reconnaissance and to designate the targets.
Naval war is all about finding the enemy before he can find you, fixing the enemy before he can fix you, and killing the enemy before he can kill you. And that is all dependent upon your targeting and your reconnaissance.
Remember, this is why the battlecruiser became a thing. That's how important it was. The whole scout, anti-scout role, recon. I mean, before aircraft, you surface ships, you have to rely on to do that. But yeah, no, it's arguably the most vital part of naval warfare.
Next, AMC Woods has asked about the Virginia class, but I see you've already answered that, Cyclic, quite comprehensively in chat. So Timu is next. Alternative history. Finns get a lot of gold from the Tsar's stash. I like that, the Tsar's stash. Before the independence and after the independence war, the Bank of Finland has 80% of the gold what Russian Empire had before the revolution. The Finns go shopping for ships for the new navy from the UK. What would they get when they're looking for cruisers and destroyers? So for the Finnish,
wow, you're assigning a huge bit of incompetence to the Finnish.
They don't go shopping for cruisers, first of all. A large chunk of that cash will go into coastal defences.
They don't go shopping for navy, first and foremost.
Assuming someone went completely mad and did.
Finland dies.
Over.
Finland dies.
Yeah, you're like. Let's
assuming that Finland will
This is
die
my
after.
problem with a lot of navalist what ifs.
Let me just very quickly rationalize. Let's say 40% of that goes to industrial development. 30% of that gold goes to the army, and 10% of that goes to the navy. Even then, that's still a ridiculous injection of capital. At that point, as far as I'm concerned, the Finns spend a good chunk of that on modern coastal defences. They then spend the rest on a pair of coast defence ships, possibly buying a pair of Spherias rather than the frankly abysmal coast defence ships. The frankly abysmal pair of coast defence ships they actually bought. And then the remaining money is spent on a 6-boat flotilla of the most modern submarines they can get, and 2 4-ship flotillas of destroyers. The most modern they can
I was
get.
scared about the Finnish Civil War, though.
I think the question is assuming after all that's said and done.
Did Finland almost go broke during it?
How
with the whites?
How dare I? I don't. I don't know what I've done. I
breathed incorrectly.
Off to the sauna with him.
Thank you. All right, I'll go. The Ilmarine... Sorry. No. Timu. They were deeply flawed ships.
How do you even pronounce those?
Ilmarinen and Viamonen, I believe. They were
Take your word for it.
Timu, they were deeply flawed ships. They were very unstable. And they were ordered at a time when the coast defense ship concept was dead. The Finns would have been far better served ordering a full flotilla of large submarines, or naval aircraft, or modern... Yes, but you didn't have enough of them. You only had, I think, 4 boats, of which only 2 were of a size larger than very small coastal subs. And I mean very small coastal subs. Yeah, one of them, Timu, one of them was basically a Type 2. 2 of them were smaller than that, I believe, and from what I remember from the museum, and then 1 was far larger. The Finns would have been far better getting a flotilla of boats similar to those Type A's. So much so that they could basically just operate them anywhere within the Eastern Baltic and the Gulf of Finland, and shut those areas down. Or with torpedo-carrying maritime patrol aircraft, possibly buying them from Sweden, modern monoplane maritime patrol aircraft, an actual dedicated squadron of them, which is something the Finnish Navy lacked. I understand why they bought that pair of coast defense ships, but they bought them far too late, and they were a bad investment for the money they paid for them. In the 30s, you really don't want to be buying coast defense ships. You want to be buying submarines, motor torpedo boats, aircraft, destroyers. Oh, the 10-inch guns were nice guns, but they were... How many times did they get to fire them in anger? Because the problem is, when your opposition is the Gangut class, they don't cut it. They're not a threat. They're not a deterrent.
They are, but...
No. The Spherias
are
a deterrent. The Ilmarine and Vidamonen, even both of them together, are not going to deter a Gangut. Even in an ambush, a perfectly executed ambush, the Gangut is still likely going to win. And walk away badly damaged, but it's still going to walk away.
I mean, I'd say just in general, coastal defense ships were never about fighting off enemy battleships. Pretty much in any period, it was always make sure the enemy cannot bully you with a close blockade with their cruisers and smaller vessels, but fighting off a battleship was never really on the cards at all.
Even then, Ilmarinen and Vidamonen can't really do that either. They can't deter any of the cruisers the Red Fleet has. They're
And them up
They have
against a
10-inch
squadron of
guns, right?
destroyers is going to run into problems if they're operated appropriately.
Like, what is their protection like?
It's not very good.
Because I mean, the thing is, the most powerful cruiser the Soviets had available in the Baltic is going to be what? One of the Kirovs? I forget. Does they have any Kirovs assigned to the Baltic? I forget. Oh God, what the hell is that armor? Sorry, I just saw the armor in these ships. Yeah, that is quite terrible, to be honest. But granted, these are very small ships. But the 10-inch guns are going to be very big deterrents for any of the Soviet cruisers because the Soviets have no cruisers that can withstand, frankly, even much smaller gunfire than 254 millimeter. Frankly, I would not want to. Granted, you could also make the argument that thus a 6-inch coastal defense ship would do you fine, but yeah, no, I mean it's just the Soviet cruisers were made out of like wax and paper in terms of armor protection. So,
but it comes down to first hit chance. The Soviet cruisers will be engaging with far more guns, and they have more ability to degrade the ship. Look, I'm getting sidetracked. I need to move on, otherwise I'll be down a rabbit hole and I'll never get anywhere again. I know this is random ramblings, but I've done that once already, and that's once too many. Where was I?
Is it?
Yes. Oh, AMC Woods asks a sci-fi question, which is
He's
probably
been trying to ask this for like 2 months now.
Which is probably Dragon's domain.
It's not actually the question I've been after, but it's a one I think is at least good.
AMC Woods
interesting enough
asks,
to me.
what if the Enterprise F from Star Trek Online appeared at either the Battle of Wolf 359 or the Battle for the Transport Conduit seen in Voyager and decided they have no choice but to get involved?
So before I answer, does anyone else have even any idea about this?
Nope.
So
Right.
in STO, they have those frequency randomizers or whatever they're called.
Yes, they do.
So,
But
So-
for a bit of explanation, an Odyssey class is the new flagship of the Federation at 1,000 meters long.
Yeah.
I think 1,046.
Oh,
with
that's
far
the,
more advanced top.
that's the
Mm,
stupid
go
one, isn't it?
No, it's actually quite reasonable
yeah.
compared to some of the others.
I
It's
think
meant to be the next generation
you're probably
long-range
thinking of
exploration,
the Unit class from Enterprise J.
which is over 3 kilometers,
Yes.
and uses subspace manifolds to hide an entire city there.
Yeah. Sea Otter's the picture of the Odyssey.
Gorgeous ship.
Yes.
Simply put, the Borg cube explodes, being simple, but and you get a very confused Federation. Because you've then also got the question of, now you've got the Department of Temporal Investigations getting involved of. So
Yes.
now you've now turned up here and changed the course of history, but you were forced to do so because you literally have appeared in front of everyone and were being shot at and couldn't get away. There's a whole lot of political shenanigans. And if they can't get back forwards in time, it depends on if you follow the law of the Temporal Prime Directive or not. Because technically speaking, an Odyssey-class starship will carry transphaser torpedoes.
Odyssey's shields could actually resist the Borg weaponry at this point.
Yes, they could.
So I would wonder if they would just dump the schematics for the frequency randomizers and run away.
I'm assuming they can't just run away, because if they could run away, that is the first thing they're doing, because
They
let's
just
not
immediately,
violate.
what the hell is going on? Okay, we're leaving. Go to war.
Yeah. Assuming that they
Everybody
somehow
there
can't.
is like briefly confused and they get back to fighting.
Same thing happens with the Voyager Conduit one, except it's now even more confusing of, well, first of all, Voyager's just turned back up. Now there's this colossal vessel. Because keep in mind, the largest ship going off current cannon, seen to this point, is 685 meters long. You've now got
Well, I would assume they're referring to
1,044 meter
on
long
the other
vessel.
side of the conduit before they get back to Earth. So in the Delta Quadrant.
And it says
where
what's
they're
called at the or the Battle of the Transport Conduit. Then they could potentially, yes, if it's on the Transport Conduit side, create a lot of shenanigans, and Voyager's going, what the hell is currently happening? Well, I'll take it. It just means we can, get home easier. An entire Borg unicomplex disappears. The Odyssey class is an incredibly powerful starship for the 23rd century. Or 24th, technically. Because it is a 25th century vessel with all of the anti-Borg tech basically added in. It is the Federation's flagship. And second largest fleet in the current canon roster. Well, canon-ish, if we include the Jupiter class at a staggering 1,140 meters. And that thing's a flying whale.
It's a whale!
Have you seen the Jupiter fleet?
Whales. Whoop, 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 whoop.
Captain, there be whales here! Star Trek references are never not funny.
You have to know this is going to happen when you mention whales. And
Oh, of course.
Whale.
That is the reason why people laugh at the Jupiter class, which is this.
Whale!
Oh
my god, that is a...
That is just... that is ugly.
Can we call
I
that...
personally
Wow.
Yes.
I hereby petition to rename that thing the Beluga.
As for as to quickly cover that one, Gold Reaper,
No,
simple.
that's the
Tractor
Federation's porta shitter.
Oh, to be honest, Cyclic, it probably gets even worse when you actually look at it, because people have made an internal schematic for the thing.
I don't want to know.
I don't wanna know.
want to know.
I don't want to know. I don't
Do
want
not link that.
Do not link it.
Emotional damage.
No comment.
Run
Yeah,
away!
pretty much what Phoenix just said.
Run away!
What, you don't want to see the giant internal void because it's a carrier?
No, that makes it worse. Carriers don't
I know it
belong in
does.
Star Trek.
Star Trek, I know.
No, they really don't.
Fighters don't
Anyway.
work in space. I mean, they really don't, but
Getting back on topic.
physics doesn't make most of
Yeah.
it.
I suspect that I don't think we'd see Unimatrixes just randomly blowing up. I suspect after they figure out the transwarp hub, that one transwarp hub, and just probably just nuke it so they can't rebuild another one. Like actually destroy the whatever star gas giant or whatever it's on. I don't remember.
You don't realize how hard it is to
actually
blow up a
destroy that.
star?
I mean,
It is
I wouldn't put it past the
It's
Odyssey.
very, very hard in Star Trek.
Like, Star Trek has not even come close to that because of how difficult that is.
Don't blow
But-
up stars.
But if they're
It's bad for your spine.
or some way or another figure out a method
hurts a
by
bit.
which the Borg can't rebuild another one there, I would almost see the Enterprise F going on basically a one-man crusade to do that to all the transwarp hubs.
Like, assuming
No.
we're getting the whole thing where they're ignoring the Temporal Prime Directive and don't get intercepted, they could quite reasonably blow up a lot of Borg stuff. But beyond that,
big
they will not be able to blow up all of the Borg. There's too much.
That's why I'm thinking they specifically go after the transwarp hubs.
And all of them are known, though. The Odyssey won't actually know where they are.
He's got a point there.
As I said, it'll be mostly very fun times with the Department of Temporal Investigations.
Yeah.
Basically summed up with, I'm sorry, you did what?
But
Right.
we might have done an oopsie and forever changed history.
Yeah, you little... where are we? Okay, so... what? Oh, next is a question, a very simple open and shut case from 1981. Were the Queen Elizabeth class modified battleships modernized in the 1930s to keep them around until you see a post-line successor getting built? Yes, that is literally the whole point of the modernization. You have summed it up in one.
Pretty much.
Well done, Knight. Congratulations. I hyperinflated my Minecraft economy asks, rate this modernization of the Enterprise. Yep, that's what you'd expect. That's about right. It's basically an Essex modernization, but for a Yorktown. That's about right. That's
Yep.
what you'd expect. What's next? Next.
Actually, I'm not sure I'd expect the Yorktowns to get modernized like that.
I mean, if it happens, it makes sense, but I think I agree with you. It wouldn't get to that
I
point.
don't think it even makes sense for it to happen, but
Yeah. No, that's what I said. It doesn't make sense for it to
Yeah.
happen, but if it does, that's what it would look
think
like.
If they do, the most they'd be doing is working as a training carrier.
Yeah. Knight6831 on YouTube asks, would it be accurate to say we will never really know where the air pocket that saved Hood's 3 surviving crew came from? Yes, absolutely. There is no way to know. No way to know. We can guesstimate, talk about it, debate, discuss, examine, go back and forth.
There's no way to know for sure. I mean, I remember somebody, I think it may have been Drac at one point, mentioning it might have been one of the boilers going up.
Could have been release of gases. Could have been.
Yeah.
Oh, Cevix has an interesting. Well, it is a stupid. He says, "Oi, I have a stupid question, so be aware. How much would the Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars be impacted if percussion lock was in more or less common use? Let's say at the beginning of 1791. Do you mean percussion cap? Or is percussion lock something a firearms term I'm not aware of? If you mean the percussion cap, oh boy.
It's gonna have an impact, but realistically...
More people died, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, percussion cap.
It's just gonna mean line infantry have a higher rate of fire.
Yeah,
You're basically looking at Civil War.
More reliable fire.
You're basically looking at the Civil War. That's...
No, you're not. There's other things,
yeah.
like this isn't what makes the U.S. Civil War the U.S. Civil War, and if that's the only thing that is the situation, I mean, remember a good chunk of the U.S. Civil War was fought entirely with rifles.
True.
And Minier balls. So it just means when an infantryman fires his rifle, it's far more likely to go off, and his reload is faster. But how much of an impact that's going to have? Probably not much.
Fair enough. Right, I think the next question is actually one from Brackman. You are Grand Moff of the Empire in 3 BBY. The treason of the Mon Calamari has been found out by the Corps, and you are ordered by Lord Vader to deal with them. There are currently no SSDs available for the operation. Are you telling me I can't even scrape together a bloody Praetor? Moving on.
They're not SSDs.
You don't need them.
Praetor's not a Super Star Destroyer.
The ISB has warned that the Rebel Alliance will come and support the Mon Cala with all level strike crafts and capital units. How do you set up a task force to attack Mon Cala and their shipyards? Just grab 100 Imperial Star Destroyers and just absolutely...
Won't be as easy as you think. Mon Cala is still a heavily fortified system from the Clone Wars. It has surface-based weaponry, ground-based weaponry, defensive stations, mental.
I'm coming in with 100 Star Destroyers. That's not an insignificant force.
They have planetary ion cannons.
Fleet. 100 Star Destroyers is not anywhere near as large of a force as you think it is in Star Wars.
Now, in particular, I've been told I am a Moff, right? Or Grand Moff.
Yep.
Which means, theoretically speaking...
I am.
Well, want to try it, Rebel Boy?
I'm not the Rebels.
Uh-huh. This means I can easily get a fleet of 2,400 ships. Now, admittedly, not all of those are Star Destroyers.
And a good chunk of battle cruisers.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about the mandate. I forgot the mandators aren't technically super.
No, this is fleet.
Not
fleet.
Even mandators here.
Mandators fall into the SSD category.
Technically speaking, they don't. They're Star Dreadnoughts.
That's an SSD.
Yeah, you've got to love Star Wars' system.
No, I don't. I hate it.
Close enough for government work here. So realistically, you can pull in Praetors, Secutors.
I'm gonna need the Secutors for the fighter coverage.
Also, 3BB, in particular, 3BBY is a very important date, because this means the TIE Interceptors just became available for fleet-wide service.
Oh boy!
And is entered
in
mass
numbers.
production.
Oh wait,
yes.
In numbers.
Oh wait, it's BBY. It's before Battle of Yavin. Oh yes. Oh sorry. Forgive me.
This is a fight. This is the fight the Empire wants.
Yeah. Forgive me. This is.
You wouldn't be at. So realistically, You wouldn't be there. There is a similar situation to this in current canon. Although what the Empire does is they catch them at the rendezvous point in an ambush, and have some fun cybersecurity stuff going on, cyber warfare stuff going on.
Yeah.
But
so I basically get to bring the
this
Imperial
is the fight
hammer
that
down.
the Empire wants. Darth Vader is going to be heavily involved in this.
If I'm a Grand Moff, does that give me Tarkin-like authority over Vader? Because
Yes.
it does.
Not over Vader.
Not over Vader.
Authority
Only
over
Tarkin
Vader.
had that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can try it. It's just you'll try it once.
This is a very quick way.
Be careful not
have
to
a
choke
very
on your
quick
aspirations.
retirement.
There,
Don't
Grand
you
Moff.
dare use that line on me! God damn it. Alright,
Don't
okay.
worry. It'll just be a nice quick click, and that's all you know.
Okay, let me think. Knowing what I know now, let me think. Alright, so I think I'll probably hoist my flag on... obviously, because I'm an Imperial, and therefore after glory and not really thinking strategically, I will not be obviously doing the big picture thing and staying back and commanding the battle from a place where I can see the grand strategic view. Of course not! I'll be flying my flag probably on a Praetor 2 as the flag. Probably have another 3 Praetor 2s as the core of the battle line. So I'll have 4 Praetor 2s. Flank them with... let me see. How many Allegiance class can I get? Probably 10. Get 10 Allegiance class as the outer wings of the central core of the task force.
Dragon, do you want to tell him or should I?
Right. So, Cyclic, I don't know if you're aware of this. The Praetor 2 is actually my favourite ship in all of Star Wars.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how he's trying to line this up.
I know. Like, first of all, I find it very amusing that you're being at the front line in a Praetor 2.
You're sitting back. You have the weapons on the Praetor 2 have the range to sit back behind a screen.
Oh, no, you guys...
Easily.
Oh,
Also, the Praetor 2 is incredibly slow.
I would point out, you gentlemen didn't let me finish.
Very well. Right. We'll let you cook, and then we'll tear you apart.
So the
It's always good to let the meat properly simmer.
So the Allegiances and the Praetors, along with a screen of Carracks, Tartans, Imperial light fleet carriers, this is the reserve force at the edge of the battle. I'm basically there as command and control, heavy assets. I'm basically a heavy reserve, fighter reserve. I'm basically there to command the battle, but I'm there in the battle space.
But you just said that you're here for glory, so you'd be at the front lines.
No. I can have glory by winning the day. There's no glory if the day's not won. I have to be seen to be in the battle, but only an idiot would actually go to the front line without actually... Especially since this is the chance to destroy the rebellion once and for all, I don't want to fuck it up. Because
this probably won't destroy the rebellion. This is just taking away their capital assets in future.
Well, if the entire rebel fleet is coming in to support...
Oh, yeah. That's why I can't imagine the entire rebel fleet. I suspect if they realise there's something, they'll just go, nope, sorry, Mon Cala.
Well,
you're dead.
It does say all available strike crafts and capital units.
All available, so that might...
So I reckon some strike craft and capital units might suddenly become unavailable.
We're busy dealing with a potential Empire group. We're not going there. We can't get there in time.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Home 1 might be there.
Home 1's definitely there.
Which in that case then... Oh, that's good.
Home 1 is a Mon Calamari flagship.
So in that case then, the main force that's going into actually the fleet engagement is going to be... probably 1,000 Star Destroyers of mix of 1s and 2s. Backed up, but scattered in amongst them for anti-fighter cover is Carracks and Tartans. Toss in a couple of 100 Dreadnoughts just because I can. And I don't know, scatter 20 more Allegiance class among that fleet for a bit of a heavier punch. And if the rebels fight, the main fleet gets them. If they try to run, because of where I am, I'll have enough warning to get to them. The Allegiance class will race off and pin them down. Then I'll swagger up with my 4 Praetors and batter them into submission if they try to run. Obviously, both the main fleet and the reserve fleet that I'm part of will have Interdictor Star Destroyers in it. You aren't running from this one, Sunshine. And note, Interdictor, Star Destroyers, not Immobilizer Cruisers. I'm not making the same mistake bloody Thrawn did.
No, Thrawn actually didn't make a mistake there. His problem was the commander on it was an idiot.
Yes, but I'm not stupid enough to bring cruisers into a fleet action. They won't survive long enough.
You have to.
You literally have to, but okay.
The Immobilizer Star Destroyer exists, based on the Imperial hull?
And they can hide in the shadow of an Imperial 1 or 2 if you need to.
Also, you get more coverage from a much larger number of 418s.
Yeah, it doesn't block it out over the whole system, Fleet.
Also, the problem is with the problem with the Dominator as well, which some people call it, is I don't actually know if they're ready in 3BBY yet.
Oh, for the love of Mike. Alright, fine, I'll bring Immobilizers.
Also, the fact that you're bringing Dreadnoughts?
Yeah, why are you bringing...
In 3BBY?
You have much, much better options as the Empire.
Even though I am the Empire, I'm still bringing a massive task group to bear that might be drawing down from
but also,
other parts of the Empire.
The way you're commanding this might get a large number of Empire ships destroyed.
It's not the rebels can't have enough forces to try and
losses are to be expected, of course.
Yes, but I'm throwing enough ship. I'm throwing 3-4-1 odds at them. That's not even including the reserve fleet.
You're also completely forgetting hyperspace as a realm of maneuver in how you enter into the battle.
Oh, I'm not Thrawn. All right,
I'm not even talking about Thrawn stuff. I'm talking about shit that's normal for the Clone Wars, my guy.
No, I'm not a good fleet admiral. My tactics involves throw shit at the wall.
You think we're, you know?
You seem to be doing better than me.
That know how to do all this.
You seem to be doing better than me.
Well, yes, because we make it right. The fact that you didn't bring any Raider class along is surprising to me. Or Lancers, even. You brought Tartans, but Tartans are very big. Like, where's your anti-fighter cover?
Carracks.
Carracks aren't
Carracks are not anti-fighter, my guy.
Yeah, sorry, not Carracks. Oh, what are they called?
Lancers?
That's the one!
Like, right, okay. But then the Raider class has entered service at this point. The Raider class is perfect for this because it's much smaller.
Yeah, but the Raider class is a covert ops ship.
No, it's not.
It's not.
It's an anti-fighter corvette.
I also hate
it. The fact that it exists.
So here's the other thing about the Lancer. It is not very fast.
It is slow as hell. I believe it's.
If you have to use them, you have to use them. Yeah. But like, you are going to as many raiders as you can get because you are fighting above the planet.
Oh God!
And all the snub raiders, quite literally, on the world, are going to come up at you.
I've completely.
Look in mind, the Raider class is 150 meters long. It's so much smaller than a Tartan, which is about 500.
Tartans are not 500 meters long.
Tartans are big.
No, they're not. That was decanonized ages ago. They're small now.
Oh, sorry, they're 250. Sorry, not 500, but that's still 100 meters longer, but less anti-air effort.
Oh.
Also, I agree with Cyclic. The problem with the Lancer is, while it's a semi-okay anti-fighter ship, just because it's got so many, it's got the same sub-light speed as an Imperial-class Star Destroyer.
All right. All right. Look, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna go for a minute. I cede command of the operation first to Cyclic and then to Dragon. I'll let you two bring in your own fleet composition.
Tartans initially. It looks, but yeah, Tartans were initially classed as 600 meters, but then were updated down to 250 because people thought a 600 meter long corvette or patrol cruiser would be questionable, even by Star Wars standards.
The reality is, you're a Moff. Vader's a fleet commander.
Mm-hmm.
And your responsibility is to get him as many battle groups as you can.
Yeah.
He'll choose the overall commander.
So I'll just grab my handy little Imperial handbook. Because I actually have the full Imperial fleet structure of what Moffs and Grand Moffs can get. So as a sector group is something that we can quite reasonably get our hands by, which is 2,400 ships, which is not a small amount by any means.
You're not going to be able to drag them all because you still got to do the security patrols, but you can drag basically all of the mainline combatants.
I do think I honestly don't see us necessarily getting a whole ton of Praetors. Praetors are command ships, not necessarily front line. This was learned by the Empire in testing them that they didn't work as well as they had hoped. Are these in service yet? There's also another thing we've got to consider. Mon Calamari has a planetary shield.
Let me
and
guess.
Planetary shields are hard to crack.
We haven't got anything to crack them with.
That's what I'm actually just checking. And actually we do. We have a massive bloody fleet.
Yes.
Look, a rocket sufficient velocity.
That's the other thing. You have tractor beams.
Oh wait, with the Empire we get to be evil. I keep forgetting that.
The problem here is achieving enough of a space superiority that you can detail most of the fleet to bombarding the shield until it cracks under the weight.
I'm sorry, I've just seen what Phoenix has posted.
And once you do that,
The hell is an aluminum falcon?
and while you're doing that, you need to be looking for and engaging anytime, and this is sort of the problem, you're going to have to be using ships as sacrificial pawns to draw out the planetary defense weapons.
Well, it's a good thing we care about. We don't care about our, our men and soldiers. And
I mean, in this kind of a fight.
Now, personally, I'm a bit of a different person over there. The Onganar will not be ready for service yet, Wellesley, I'm pretty sure.
Do we have torpedo spheres?
That's what I was just checking. There were 6 of them as of 4. Words. Right. As of 0 BBY, 6 torpedo spheres were in active service with over 100 more laid down. But there's not an actual date for when they were first used. There is apparently a time when they were used for testing in bombardments of Yaga Minor, but there's no date on that either.
Oh, for God's sake. We need at least 2 of them to crack the planetary shield.
Up the
fleet.
Why would you need 2? You only need 1.
I want to do overkill.
2 for redundancy.
Yes, 2 for redundancy, and I want
but you
overkill.
try and convince Imperial Weapons Development to give us both of their experimental torpedo spheres.
I will point out that I have...
Convince Darth Vader that they are necessary.
Yes, and then I'll let him go and convince them.
Yeah, but
he's only got to make one holonet call.
Oh, God, actually, never mind. We have onagers.
We have onagers?
We have onagers.
Bet.
Introduced somewhere between 19 BBY and 0 BBY.
I bet.
Well, there you go.
Boom.
Which is literally also designed to be a siege-breaking ship. You probably won't be able to get many of them, because they're incredibly rare.
But this is their designed purpose, so you should be able to get a couple.
I'm also going to get a torpedo sphere, because I want overkill. Because I'm the Empire. There's no kill like overkill.
There is. If you've wasted Imperial resources, and something happens... That's your head on the chopping block.
Yeah, but if I win...
Yeah, that's not coming down on Vader. That's coming down on you from Vader.
Yes, but if I win...
Yeah, but even if you win,
and
something
you
happens
can still
elsewhere,
be criticized.
Yeah, like, this is Vader we're talking about. This isn't Thrawn, who will go, oh, you made a mistake. Do you accept your mistake? Okay, very well.
Thrawn wasn't always that generous.
Thrawn was usually generous as long as you didn't try and blame someone else and say it was never your fault and you had no problems at all. But you would probably still get at least a demotion and something else would happen. So, Vader will gladly send your neck to the chopping block if something happens.
I will point out we are bringing a metric fuck ton of Star Destroyers, a metric fuck ton of screens, a metric fuck ton of everything else. What is a few onagers and a torpedo sphere on top of that?
And incredibly classified Imperial vessels that are still in prototype phases, primarily.
And what I would say is we get to use them to blow up cities.
Yes.
Well, see, now, yeah.
You are
that's actually
revealing a weapon that is not yet ready.
Now,
with the torpedo sphere.
unfortunately, even in a planetary invasion, there is no way we can stop all information getting out. It's impossible.
Well, then in that case,
people learn of this.
In that case, then
all of a sudden that secret weapon's now no longer secret.
Yes. In that case, then what we need to do is we need to use the onagers, not the torpedo spheres, and I want it broadcast to the galaxy. I want the galaxy to watch as I glass city after city after city to make it clear what happens.
The
if
onager
you
was
betray
more
the
secret
Empire.
than the torpedo sphere.
Oh no! The onagers won't be with things being broadcast, but once the shield is cracked, they'll go away, and then we'll broadcast the cities being glassed.
The Empire didn't broadcast that.
That is literally the way you would have a bigger rebellion break out on you. People do not react well to glassing planets.
I mean,
Base
Delta Zeros were rare.
But yeah,
bit of a weird question.
Go on.
But what exactly is a torpedo sphere?
It's literally a spherical ship with over 250 torpedo launchers all at the front, designed to saturation bombardment a planetary shield down.
Okay, that makes sense then. Okay.
And these are incredibly heavy proton torpedoes.
Okay.
The big boys, the large lads.
Right,
these are torpedoes that like an executor is concerned about.
Like that's a frontal profile, and this is as best an angle I can find otherwise. It is literally like honestly, torpedo egg might function slightly better.
Circle.
Yeah, like an egg someone you smash the one side of.
Wellesley,
okay,
Wellesley makes a point that I'd forgotten. Yeah, I don't want to pull Nolder on early.
Yeah, like if you broadcast this, yeah, this ends badly.
Yeah, and then I'll get Palpatine, not Vadered. And Palpatine's a sick fucker, so God knows what'll happen to me.
Knowing him, he'll kill you and revive you to kill you again. Because he did that.
I know, to the designer of the Death Star. In Legends. There is no war around Mon Cala. Yeah, pretty much. We'll have to do that. But yeah, provided all that happens, we can win.
Mon Cala's going down one way or another because of the sheer forces at our hands, but it's not going to be a clean fight.
No, it doesn't. Yes, it's not going to be a clean fight.
And then the question is, are we actually just straight up glassing the planet, or is there meant to be an attempted invasion?
Well...
Is this so if the treason's discovered, is this a punitive wipe it out sort of thing?
It can't be.
Do we want some of their resources still?
Because
Mon Calamari are still very useful. And if the Quarren gave us this information...
So we're basically genociding the Mon Calamarans and putting the Quarrens in charge as the sole species on that planet.
Which means you get the fun thing of AT-AT swimmers.
I don't want to think about that.
They have those?
Yes, they have those.
They swim now? They
swim now.
It's literally just
a dedicated water vehicle. Oh, what AT-AT? Just take off the legs, put on some fins. What could possibly go wrong? It's a hydrodynamic shape, right?
You joke about that, but this is what they look like.
Mother.
Ah, yes.
Like,
yes.
For the technically
Swimmy
speaking,
boy.
what they actually are called is the AT-AT, Aquatic Terrain Armored Transport. The Imperial soldiers called them the AT-AT Swimmer.
I hate that's just a Cybertruck underwater.
This is the writer is saying,
no, it's
we are too lazy, go screw yourself, and I'm just going to take out the legs and call it a day.
That's genuinely cool up in a nutshell, though.
Egregious.
Good enough.
That is very bad.
Yeah. I want boat. I want
It
Empire
can carry
boat.
40 Marines on it.
Where?
In that rear back section, apparently.
You mean
it's in the same way that the Cybertruck has a lot of lift capacity.
Funny. Well, we know we know where Elon was during the Star Wars timeline.
It looks like a basset hound that was crippled.
Also, for the record, these were in use for over 100 years.
Oh, the Empire did fall after all.
And were then used to try and genocide them on Calamari.
along with the
So they'll
world
be quite
devastators.
Eye of Palpatine you will not be seeing. Eye of Palpatine is a highly secretive super weapon.
And it's not ready yet.
Actually, the eye should be.
Oh, I don't get to.
What's the Eye of Palpatine?
What if we take an asteroid and stick a Death Star laser to it?
And a bunch of guns.
So what the hell was the point of the Death Star?
Because more
yeah,
super
the Eye of
weapons.
Palpatine was blown. The Eye of Palpatine was eventually blown up. It also went missing, and its sister ship, which apparently had a sentient AI, also just left one day.
And of course, you know, you can never have too many super weapons.
Well,
Considering they were
clearly,
expected to fight
obviously,
an
if you build a
extragalactic
super weapon
invader.
Cyclic, are you there? Cyclic?
Yeah.
Oh, thank God for a second there. I thought, never mind.
Well, clearly the lesson to be learned is if you build a super weapon and every time you build one it either blows up somehow or wanders off apparently, the obvious solution is why not just build more super weapons?
Exactly.
Obviously,
Well, the thing is we need them because the
They stopped.
the scary
Well, after a
bug
while,
men
they
are
stopped
coming.
including sentient AI in them.
Yeah. Also, the scary bug people are coming. I don't want.
Yeah,
we
that's
need
true.
super weapons.
The eye was
That
started
was the case.
construction at 18 BBY, but then disappeared.
Bye. I'm going. I won't be back.
God forbid you tell anybody what's going to happen, because you are, a space wizard, as opposed to we need to crush everybody under the boot and encourage lots of rebellion. That way we'll be strong enough to fight the
Yes,
galactic
Conqueror
invaders.
is theoretically available, but Conqueror might be useful, but it all depends on basically if what's-his-name gets to it first.
I feel like
honestly, one
I
of the big
feel
problems
like,
will be Rebel sabotage of getting the fleet here.
Yeah, I feel like we've basically I think
The ground war will be hellish.
Yeah, we've beaten this one to death, lads.
Yeah.
Where are we? Moving swiftly on. Get out of my house.
There should be a YouTube one.
Oh yes, it
Unless
should be.
there's any-
It should be. Why didn't the USSR Navy use the? No.
Use
no.
Use the
sorry.
what?
Why didn't the USSR's Navy use the Mikoyan MiG-31 BM Foxhound's predecessor, the MiG-25? Because the MiG-25 is there's a reason why they were retired in favor of the MiG-31.
What was the question?
Why didn't the USSR's Navy use the Mikoyan MiG-31 BM Foxhound's predecessor, the MiG-25?
Because it wasn't available to them. Had it been available, they would have probably used it. It would have been one of the few aircraft that they could project out that far and still maintain useful combat loiter time with. It was just not available in enough numbers. It was a very, very expensive plane to produce. And was prioritized for the air defense forces, which makes a lot of sense given what it was designed to do.
Yeah, the XB-70 scared the Russians, quite rightly, to be fair.
This really, part of this was XB-70, but part of this was the air defense forces fleet just dramatically needed more long-range capable interceptors. The XB-70 is talked up a lot, and that has some stuff to do with the MiG-25. But when it comes to trying to get out to the B-52s before they can launch their Hound Dogs, before they can launch their other cruise missiles, it's the best bet they have.
Makes sense. So, next question is, Admiral Wellesley says, yesterday we were talking about how the Deutschlands could in theory act as colonial flagships. Can that work? Yes. Yes, it absolutely can. Like any cruiser worth its salt, the Deutschlands have a capability to operate overseas. And, like any cruiser worth its salt, they can act as colonial station ships and flagships. The Deutschlands in particular, with their high range, and being designed to operate in any ocean on the planet, are basically the ideal German vessels to function in that role. For the Kriegsmarine, that is.
I mean, diesel-powered vessels in general are pretty good at that role. I mean, It's just for ships of that era, unless you have marine diesels of sufficient capability, there's a lot of sacrifice.
You missed one again,
involved
fleet.
in that.
Did I?
Another one from gunnery officer.
Did I?
About EMLAS catapults. At 2010.
What?
Oh yeah, I see it. It's from your typical gunnery officer. Short question. Can we do a bit of myth busting about the EMALS catapult on the Gerald R. Ford class? Do you think it's better than the Steam catapult in the Nimitz class, or at least had more advantages than the Steam catapult?
Handedly, it requires far less maintenance than a steam catapult. There's far less downtime. It enables the crew to actually sleep while the ship can still conduct very high-intensity flight ops. It is able to launch lighter loads and heavier loads than a steam catapult can, and it is nicer on the airframes and landing gear of the aircraft it is launching. There's no comparison. People who tell you that the steam catapults on a Nimitz are better than what Gerald R4 had do not know what they're talking about and should be ignored. To be blunt. Even if they claim they work at the shipyard.
This is all the bit about when we were talking about.
Do you not have another YouTube one?
We do, but they're both questions that are very specific, and I don't.
Right.
It's about.
Technically speaking, your next one is a bit of a weird joke one, I think.
What time? What timestamp?
I'll see if I can quickly find it again, because I'm going off my list so far. 2048.
While they're looking for this, gunnery officer steam is not cheaper because you have to maintain all the piping.
Yep.
And you have to grease every single fitting.
Oh, this is the one from Moe. Oh, no, so it's one from Sea Dodders.
Nope, there's one before the one from Moe. Moe's is actually a question, even if
a lot more frequent.
Sea Dodders asks, how do Roombas clean corners? They have little spinny bits that go spinny, 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 spin, and then they go into the corner, and then they go spinny, 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 spin, and the spinny bits get the spinny bits, and they spin.
They actually just carry a claymore and just get rid of the corner.
Oh yes, the tactical Roomba.
I think a unitary charge is usually better for getting rid of corners, in my experience.
Probably. A demolitions charge would probably do it as well.
Of course, and then of course you've got the very special Russian Roombas, which is a bloke with a brush. So they clean corners that way. There's the Ukrainian Roomba, which is 5 miles away and dropping rapidly towards your location. There's the British Roomba, which was cancelled due to budget concerns.
No, the British one's also just some person who's sweeping in a corner.
There's the US Roomba, which has a laser defense system, 2 M15s strapped to the top, and is dropped from an F-117 Nighthawk to very rapidly clean that corner.
And it's made by Tesla, so it probably won't work.
Oh no, it's made by Lockheed Martin.
I was going to say Texas Instruments, but that works too.
There's the French Roomba, which is smoking a cigarette going, I never loved the corner, you know that? I never wanted to clean that corner anyway.
I thought they'd be fighting Zilla. Why are the French the best thing in that movie?
Oh, I don't know. But, right, there you are. So next question is from Moe. Question: how to fix Warlord era China? Answer: you cannot. The only thing that can fix Warlord era China is a existential level threat, and well, we got that in the form of the Japanese trying to.
Hood saying you don't let Mao win.
Well, yeah, that too.
Warlord China has to work itself out one way or the other. The question really is: do the nationalists stay in control afterwards, or does Mao? And if the nationalists stay in control, how long do they stay together?
Yeah. Timu asks quickly, where are the Patreon fleet pictures you promised? I promised no such thing.
I didn't even include. I'll be honest with you, I didn't even include that one.
But actually, YouTube question now from Knight6831. Why were the Italian Navy's elderly World War I-era destroyers redesignated to torpedo boats? Probably because the Italians didn't consider them to be of equivalent capability to their destroyers to consider calling them such, and most likely, but also the Italians didn't want to get rid of them, so therefore they reclassified them.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly it. I mean, it was just reflective of earlier systems where like you'd have different classes of vessel in a given category, and as they got older and less suitable for frontline duty, they were, second class, third class, etc. It was pretty much the exact same thing. Ships would be suitable for one role, and if they weren't for that anymore, then they would be knocked down into designation. So a lot of the old World War I era destroyers, right? They were still viable surface combatants for second line roles of patrol, convoy escort, and such. So, and they could be used for coastal defense, right, as a torpedo boat. So those are the roles they were relegated to, which worked well for them just because, they had the hulls. Ships were expensive to build. Most of the high quality steel had to be imported, obviously. So there's kind of limits on how much you really wanted to replace vessels, especially in the treaty era. So it just became very useful to keep them back, and this proved very useful during World War I. During World War II, because they had a whole bunch of vessels they could fall back on for convoy escort duties, as well as torpedo boats, which helped free up a lot of the destroyers for fleet roles. Otherwise, they would have had a much more severe destroyer shortage than they had, which they already kind of had in the first place, to be honest.
Makes sense. Next question from Cvix, and I do have a qualifier before I say this. Cvix, do you really, really want the French to win so that the Duchy of Warsaw gets saved? You can say yes. So I'll now read the question verbatim. He has another stupid question regarding the late 18th century. Since we had a question about the percussion cap, how would War on the Sea be impacted if France got access to steam warships with not only paddle wheels but also screws? Would the Royal Navy be screwed? No, the Royal Navy would not be screwed. It takes more than the ability to move against the wind to render the sailing vessel obsolete.
True.
Also, I hate to break it to you, but Britain is far more advanced in steam engines than the French are, and if the French get jumped forward in capability, the British will start throwing money at steam development aggressively. And they will catch up in about 10 to 15 years.
Apparently the answer is yes, Fleet. He does want that.
I figured as much.
All you have to do for Poland to survive is just delete Russia from existence.
All those in favour?
The Mongols come back.
Are those opposed?
The Poles fended off the Mongols.
Actually, it's a fun old history. It would be far too involved, but the Mongols don't actually take out the Kievan Rus, so modern Russia, as we know it, does not develop.
Yippee! Everyone rejoiced.
That would result in
I would be very cautious about rejoicing on that.
Yeah, it would just be
given they killed the vast majority of the Wehrmacht soldiers.
I don't even know what would develop in their place, to be honest.
Yeah, but before you say yippee to wiping out Russia,
that'd be something in their place.
And the Russian Empire. Yeah, but you don't know if that's going to be a unified nation or a bunch of princedoms. Or something in between.
You've got a point there.
When it comes to stuff like that, you need to be very, very careful before you start cheerleading in one thing.
Oh yeah, bluntly, we don't know if Nazi Germany, Freudian slip there, sorry, if Nazi Germany even exists in that timeline.
We don't know what's going to happen.
True.
Yeah, exactly.
Brackman says, I for one welcome our new Mongolian overlords. And for the first time actually, let me just have a look. I will answer one more question from Knight, as we've actually caught up with YouTube.
Yeah.
And then oh, sorry, no. Sorry, one more from Discord, which will be your typical Gunnery Officer's question, and one more from YouTube, which will go first. So, Knight6831, so why 1902 with the British looking at a design 1902 King... I'm sorry, Knight, I don't quite understand the question. Why in 1902 were the British looking at a design 1902 and it's hidden by the bloody emoji
You want
thing.
to just copy and paste it?
Yes.
Like,
Why are the British in 1902 looking at a design 1902, aka enlarged King Edward VII or enlarged Duncan design? Probably
pre-dread.
So
A question about pre-dreads.
So you're basically asking me why in 1902 were the British looking at an expanded version of the ships they built the previous year, which is
No.
standard practice.
Of the King Edwards and King Edwards and the Duncans, right? Yeah, because they were built.
That's the
Started construction in 1902.
So that's the
like, isn't that basically what you end up getting with the Swiftsures to a degree?
I think so. I don't quite understand.
That literally is the Swiftsures.
Like, because this is before Dreadnought's really there.
Yeah,
this is where the work on Dreadnought's being done.
Well,
this is when they're trying to figure out how to.
Like 1904 is when he assumed office and ordered the design studies for it.
Yeah, so
this
before
is
that,
still 2 years after that date.
2 years before, you mean?
Yeah, but so the reason why is because that's how naval design goes.
I think I think that's what you mean. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't quite understand, but I think that's the best we can do for now. Probably a better question for Drac or Dr. Clark. They may have more nuance or more nuanced information on the subject than we do. And finally, from your typical gunnery officer, question 4 from him. Thoughts on the
it's the fucking, it's right there in the chat and you run right over it.
Did I?
Yeah.
Where?
There's 2 from Discord. Brackman, are there any good dioramas about fleet battles that are open to public in museums or smaller engagements that you're aware of?
I have no idea. Your typical gunnery officer asks, thoughts on the AMPV, successor to the M113? Do you think the British Boxer is better than the AMPV? I don't know about any of those things.
Let me put it to you this way. I would not want to use a Boxer in the roles that AMPV is designed for. But I do think the British Armoured Infantry would be dramatically better served by AMPVs than by Boxer. Boxer is just fundamentally not designed for the role the British Army is going to be shoving it in, i.e. to replace Warrior. And I don't mean as like not as it's an APC versus IFV. I mean you're mixing wheels and tracks. We are seeing in Ukraine why full tracked formations are a good idea. You cannot always be bound to roads. When you are very, very vulnerable to interdiction by artillery deployed mines, which can prevent rapid advance of reserves to the front or prevent rapid breakout after a breakthrough and prevent you from exploiting any potential major breakthrough in a line you have just achieved. You don't want to be constrained to roads when you are in muddy terrain. And the British Army needs to be focusing, when it comes to its heavy combat formations, or I should say formation, on the realities of fighting in Eastern Europe. You need to be prepared for mud.
Good lord. Right. Sorry, your typical gunnery officer, your question was the last, I'm afraid. Thank you. So for once, I'm finishing before I have to actually go off to sleep, which means I have a little bit of time for myself this evening, which is nice.
Also, congratulations, Fleet. This is the first time you've actually answered all of the questions before you captured the questions.
I know.
Compared to last week, where you answered one question out of 17 from Discord.
I would point out that was a very special episode. That was the second part of a two-part
Only
special.
50% of that was taken up by the insanity of the thing. He answered 26 out of 26.
I hyperinflated my Minecraft economy. I'm not finishing Wellesley's timeline today. I do not.
I think Fleet does want to do stuff this evening.
I would like to have some free time because I've come off. My literal day.
He doesn't need free time.
My
We can
literal
continue.
My literal day has been get up, go to work, come back from work, have 15 minutes to lie down and rest my shoulder, spend half an hour cooking dinner, eat dinner, ramblings.
And I see. I just went without food all day. Simple solution.
Wait. You have to eat?
Yes.
You need to eat so that you keep gaining weight.
What? Just a minute. What's that supposed to mean?
Not you, Foxo.
Look, I have a healthy weight. That means I don't have to eat anymore.
Look, I have been.
That means you need to maintain that weight.
Look, I've had a bad shoulder since I fell over onto a concrete pavement chasing a steam locomotive to get a picture. No, I'm not sorry.
Why?
Look, I was
Would you at
lying.
least get a good picture?
Look, I was lying in bed in university, and I heard some clanking outside my window, and there's a steam engine going past, so I threw on some clothes and ran down the stairs and was going down the thing to follow it, 'cause it was slowing down to stop at a signal check. And then I fell over, tried to recover, couldn't recover, and therefore face-planted the concrete at about 5 miles an hour. On my shoulder.
Quote, did you at least get a picture?
No.
Brilliant!
Damn it.
And I think I did something to my shoulder. I never got it seen to because I didn't think too much of it, and now it hurts. Now it hurts sometimes.
Well, the NHS is literally free.
I'm aware of that, but I just didn't think to actually deal with it at the time, and I may have to deal with it now because I feel things cracking and creaking, and it's not supposed to. Especially now I've lost weight. You may all point and laugh now.
It's more just a case of slow clap, which I think is what Cyclic's doing.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
That was a very slow clap.
I 100% understand the thought process that would lead you to do that, but come on, at least get the picture.
Like, at least when I made a mistake
The
like
problem
that,
is-
A, didn't hurt my shoulder, and B, actually got a picture of the locomotive.
The problem is, I fell over. By the time I was back on my feet again and running, which because I was doing that mostly to run off the pain, the locomotive was.
I really hope there was somebody somewhere with a video camera to capture this.
Probably
there was someone who watched me go down, but they were more concerned in asking me if I was all right rather than taking a video.
So they
of
were
it.
at least being a semi-good person, then, I guess. So that's
This
good
is a
enough.
college campus. There had to have been somebody with a video camera that
Nope.
took a clip. and
Depends
they
what
just
time of
haven't-
night. It
we-
depends what
we
time it
just-
was.
It was in the middle of
How
the day.
old are you? Phone.
The worst thing was, the worst thing is my hand.
I'm not allowed to do that because of what you sent me.
The
Just
worst
saying.
thing, the worst thing is my hand hurt so much, and I was having trouble doing things with it, and I had to go to a black tie event that evening, which meant that it took me 2 hours to get into my suit.
Oh man, that sucks. I'm sorry. Also, complete non sequitur. I just saw something very cursed on Twitter. Someone took a Tesla Cybertruck and painted it blue, and then stuck the fake wood paneling on it like it's a station wagon.
No.
Like,
And on that terrible disappointment, it is time to end. Thank you very much
at least
for
when
watching, folks.
At least when I failed. At least when I failed to take.
Take care, folks. And I'll catch you next time. Because Phoenix, that is too
Right,
cursed to
time to time.
continue.
I'm so glad they're illegal in Europe and the UK.
I
Oh,
hadn't seen them until I got down to the Northern Virginia area around DC, and now suddenly
they are
I've seen a bunch
so
of them.
stupid.
Yes,
And I
they
have
are.
seen somebody. I have seen somebody try to launch a boat with one, and oh my gosh, they couldn't see the trailer behind them. It was so hilarious. Like they could
Why
not
do people
launch the
buy
boat.
them? Why do people buy them?
I don't know. If you want an electric pickup, just get a 150 Lightning. Like, oh, they're not great, but they're better than that piece of trash. Oh.
They pick it up because they want a vehicle that doesn't have any modern safety features. What is a crumple zone? I don't care. I'd rather
You
just kill
are the
everybody
crumple
around
zone.
me.
They're so dense that light
Who-
bends as it goes past them.
Yeah. Dragon, who are you? Anne
Hmm?
Morrison. You
What?
are the Crumple Zone. Is that the new version of Weakest Link?
Well, no, it's literally just the joke about cars with no crumple zone.
No, I'm aware.
You are the crumple zone.
I thought
crumple zone is what keeps people alive, Fleet. Are you saying that Dragon's a reliable piece of technology that keeps people alive?
No, that's not. I was making a British joke because I thought people would remember what the weakest link was, but apparently
Of course,
not.
I remember what Weakest Link is. I just don't remember what the person who hosts it's called. I never really liked watching it.
Neither did I, but at least.
Okay, are we going to end ramblings, or are we just going to stay here for another hour?
No, we want to keep Fleet on because.
This just, as you probably
no
noticed,
free
like
time.
this occasionally happens when you just keep thinking things.
Look, I don't want to.
Like there you go, Fleet. There's a locomotive.
I'm just
and
surprised we
locomotive
haven't
I
had a
failed to get the
Ukraine
actual
war
main logo
question
of.
today, but I'm not.
We
gonna
did actually.
complain.
Yeah. Look, I.
We did after we stopped taking questions.
Yeah. Look, I saw Train this weekend. I was happy. I went to Preserved Railway, met Chair, we had a good chat, and we rode steam trains, and it was great. Anyway, moving on. There you are, Fleet's weekend in a nutshell.
Also, note how he actually has the power to end this, yet keeps going himself.
Alright, you want me to end it?